Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi!
Howdy do.
It's been so long since I recorded in Audacity instead of StreamYard. We don't have a guest today.
We are the guests.
That's right. So it'll just be us this time, and we'll be back to the normal next time.
The new normal. We will be as close to normal as we ever get, which isn't very fucking close at all. Oops, I swore. Could you edit that out?
No. No, I cannot.
Fine. Fucking fine.
This isn't a clean episode.
It is not.
We had New Orleans food yesterday.
It was so good. Oh my God, it was so good. The bananas Foster.
I think I still look like I have a NOLA food baby.
A food baby, yes. I got home, had a glass of wine, and just crashed hard. I had to watch the series finale of Young Sheldon.
Oh.
That was in my head. I had to do that before I could go to bed, but there was a glitch. Mm-hmm. So I was watching it on the TV. And it would go through the first scene to the first commercial break, and then it would skip the whole rest of the episode. And I went,
man.
So I had to put the CBS fuckers app on my phone and watch it on my phone. So instead of having my feet up and being comfortable watching it on the big screen,
watching it on your phone.
I was watching it on my phone. It was a very good episode. The ending was good. Did you watch Young Sheldon at all?
I can't stand Sheldon.
Oh, okay.
That's actually kind of funny, isn't it? Because isn't he supposed to be autistic?
I don't know if they ever come out and say that.
It's implied that he is.
It is very much implied.
Well, here's the fun fact. Because it's ironic, really, isn't it? That since I've mentioned on here that I might be, I was officially evaluated and am autistic. So no, I can't stand Sheldon. I stopped watching the bigger show he was from because I couldn't deal with him a lot of the time. Got on my nerves.
I was not, what was it? The Big Bang Theory.
Mm-hmm.
It was very stereotypical sometimes, but.
Yes, and they made him lack empathy, and that is a sticking point for me.
Yes. I started watching Young Sheldon, I think because Annie Potts was on it, and I love her.
Where was she?
She plays Meemaw on the Young Sheldon.
Oh, okay.
On Young Sheldon.
I mean, I like Laurie Metcalf, who's playing his mom, right? But not enough to deal with Sheldon.
No. But I liked Young Sheldon because you saw where he was coming from. This last season, I thought they did a wonderful job of showing the growth in all the different characters in the show.
Okay.
And I thought the last episode where his... fucking spoiler alert. It's been out for over a month by the time you hear this. But his dad dies.
Oh.
So.
That'll get out anyway.
It's that shock and it's the funeral and I just thought it was really well done.
I got home last night. Well, we're sitting there and Jeff goes and gets like a piece of cheese to snack on and I just stared at him for a minute and he's like, what? And I'm like, you have room for cheese? I just started laughing. I watched him eat it the whole time. Like, I was so full at that point. I was just like, looked disgusted, I think, because my brain was like, no food.
Yes, because there was jambalaya and gumbo and etouffee.
There was shrimp creole and,
there was shrimp, some kind of shrimp pie, those little shrimp pies, and rice and red beans and cornbread, muffalettas.
I only had one beignet for dessert. I'm not a big Southern dessert person. Southern dessert makes my soul sad, but the beignets were good. But
I did not have a beignet.
That's good.
Because they're just days I don't want to fuck around with powdered sugar, and yesterday was one of them.
And I was like, I'm going to breathe this in, and then I'll cough for the next 20 minutes, and I did not breathe in the powdered sugar.
Yay!
Yay! Yeah. So that was it. They have like a jalapeno popcorn at the Roadhouse Theater, and
it is delicious.
You breathe it in, and it does the same thing as the powdered sugar. And so I sat there. We went to a movie, and we got a bowl of it, and I'm sitting there, and I keep coughing, and then I keep trying. I'm like, I'm not inhaling when I'm eating this. Why? It didn't matter.
No.
So it was not exactly like the powdered sugar. That only kills you when you breathe it in. And you inevitably do so.
Oh, no. I lied. I have not had the jalapeno popcorn. I've had the salt and vinegar popcorn.
Oh, the jalapeno is good.
So this is the salt and vinegar. I just like popcorn somebody else makes for me.
It's true.
Sandwiches, salads, and popcorn always taste better if someone else makes them.
I agree. Also, French toast for me. I like it when other people make it. I don't want to make it.
I do not make outstanding French toast, but...
And I love French toast, but I don't want my French toast.
No.
I can get it vegan up at the Ferns Diner. Which
Do
is
love
nice.
Ferns. They have some outstanding burgers.
Yeah, I had one of them. But I always end up going, oh, I'm just going to get breakfast. Because I can have egg-free breakfast.
Yes.
That's so impossible anywhere else. But they also have like this giant breakfast burrito.
Ooh.
With like smothered in green chili and stuff.
I love that. On Mother's Day, we went to the omelet parlor.
You went in public?
We were there just before 8 o'clock in the morning.
Ew.
We were awake. It was
so
like,
gross.
Let's go ahead. But the pancake of the month for me was lemon poppy seed.
Oh.
And it's so good. And it's so huge. I was like, I want the pancake. I can't eat the whole pancake, but I want it. And she's like, do you want to take the leftovers home? I'm like, no, leftover pancakes. No. When they've already been doused with powdered sugar and no. God damn, it was good.
I didn't leave this house for anywhere on Mother's Day. I've worked as a server on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't play that. I'm not into ruining those people's day anymore. Then
we figured,
or mine.
We figured it's before, it's 8 a.m., so we'll be okay. And we still had to wait a few minutes, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
And we tip well. We're nice.
That's good. I wasn't saying you weren't, but I'm not going out in the crowds.
No, I was like, I don't want to go to brunch. I don't want to go to lunch. I don't want to go to dinner. No.
No. What do we? I don't even remember.
I have in the past, but it's like, no, I have no desire. And then we made kebabs at home. Kebabs. Chicken kebabs. Oh, they were really good too.
I don't remember what we did. I just wanted to relax.
Yes.
There's not very much of that lately.
I hear you.
I don't remember if that was the weekend where I just basically shut down or what. I don't remember. It was just like, nope, I couldn't even read. Like I was so exhausted and so done. I couldn't even read.
Wow.
I legit just played on my phone. I didn't even turn on the TV. Like I didn't want the sound. I was just burnt out all to hell.
I was so happy because the day after Mother's Day, that Monday, I sat down that morning and read the entire Sunday New York Times.
Wow.
I mean, I don't read every word of every section, but I page through every section and I at least read the headlines.
Found stuff you were interested in.
I read the stuff I want to read and I just read the headlines for the other, like the opinion pages. I don't read them in any paper. I mean, I even scan the obituaries. I wish I had cut the one out I found one time. It was fascinating because the picture of the guy, he just looked like the biggest dweeb. It was a very old picture and, he looked like, the big thick glasses and he kind of goofy. And I thought, I wonder what this guy did because they don't publish like everybody's obituary in the New York. So I start reading it. He had a fascinating fucking life. He just did all this stuff and he traveled and he met all these different people. And it was just, I really wish I had cut that out because you would never look at that guy and go,
he's well traveled.
He looks fascinating. Just goes to show you. Just goes
Don't
to
judge
show
on
you.
appearances.
Nope.
I've just started watching Outlander and 6 Feet Under.
I never watched
really
6
late
Feet
on
Under.
6 Feet Under. Well, that's the Dexter guy.
You're there ahead of me.
He's very uptight. I don't like watching things when everybody's talking about them because, first of all, everybody's talking about them all the time, saying you should watch this annoys me. So then I'm not going to view it with an open mind, right? I'm going to be like, nah. I'm going to hate watch it or something. So then I skip it. So then I always end up watching things like years after everybody else has watched them. So those are the two I'm watching.
I'm still watching Doom Patrol.
Oh.
Because Brendan Fraser was in it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I love him.
Well, Outlander's super rapey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I didn't enjoy the series because I did love the books. and neither one of the people looks like they're supposed to.
Oh, okay. Whereas I read like the first 3, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I got to when they were in like the Caribbean or something.
Yep.
Okay. And
I think that is book 3.
so I no longer, and it's been years since I read them, so I no longer have any pictures in my head. That probably helped.
Yes.
I think the guy that's playing Jamie is attractive.
Oh, he is attractive. He's not physically big enough. I mean, Jamie is very tall and muscular.
He's like the Reacher guy.
Yes.
Yeah. If you got a Scottish accent.
Pardon me while I wipe a little drool off my chin.
See, then you really do need to see the Ministry of
Yes.
Ungentlemanly Warfare or whatever it's called.
Yes, that's
It was really good. And it
badly
was funny.
titled movie, but
I know, it's because I'm always like, Ungentlemanly Warfare. I don't know. Yeah. What's it called?
the Henry Cavill Jack Reacher movie.
Yeah, and like I told you yesterday, it amused me so much because the Reacher guy, I don't remember his actor's name, makes
Alan,
Cavill look small.
Which is hilarious.
And I find that amusing because usually he's the biggest one on the screen. Well, he's not necessarily the tallest, but he's the broadest.
Yes.
So, nope, not when that guy's around.
I think the Reacher guy's first name is Alan.
Okay. Well, he's Swedish in it.
Oh, I love that.
The opening scene is so fantastic.
Oh, good.
There's it's fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. We haven't seen Fall Guy yet. I want to see that.
No, I want to see that as well.
We saw Abigail.
Abigail was good. What did you think of it?
I went in prepared for like a B movie, cheesy B movie I could laugh at. Mm-hmm. Instead, I laughed with it when you were supposed to, but I thought it was really good.
Fucking onions.
Okay, just fucking go get some garlic from that.
I have been laughing about fucking onions for a week.
I thought everybody was perfect for their role.
Well, I've been telling everybody because how was it? Because people are like, I thought about going to see that. So here's my thing about, and I'm an outlier, but about horror movies is I hate it when the internal logic of the story just disappears or falls apart. And this one, it held through the entire movie.
There were a couple little things I had an issue with. Yeah. But I write horror, so there's always going to be something, isn't there?
Yes. But I thought it was really well done.
Yeah.
And it was a little tropey.
It was.
But in a way, you knew who the first 2 victims were going to be.
Yeah.
As soon as you met them, they might just as well have had a big X over their face. You knew who was going to die first.
But I thought the girl who played Abigail did an excellent job because going from little girl persona to ancient vampire persona and everything. That's not a spoiler, by the way. You know from the
if you saw the preview,
but yeah, she did an act. I was like, she's great.
And the dance scenes, the way they filmed the dance scenes, like from above her head, those were they were very well done.
Yeah.
Very, very well done.
Highly recommend. I was like, I think I'm buying this on DVD when it comes out.
It was really, really good. And I mean, I've told several people, I told Amy, I said, you would not have enjoyed that movie. You made the right choice.
For some reason, I'm highly amused by the movies where, like, they do the giant blood explosion with the vampires explode into, like, because, in the old movies, it was basically ashes or whatever, and it was pretty, ready or not, everybody explodes in this big bloody thing, right? Mm-hmm. This one, and there's another vampire movie that's juicy like that, but the first time I laughed because I was just like, yay! It's a giant exploding blood bag.
Yes, and I, of course, jump at every jump scare. Every movie ever made. If there's a jump scare, doesn't even matter if I've seen it 3 or 4 times. Yeah. Still going to jump. Still going to spill my popcorn down my shirt. So, but yeah, we all know I'm a big Buffy fan. So those just turn into sand.
Yeah.
I like it. It's very neat. It's very sanitary.
It's so clean.
As opposed to blood exploding in every direction. I'm like, I don't know.
I just feel like if it's a vampire movie, there should be blood everywhere. People should be bloodied because they are fighting the vampires.
And they were.
When it's clean, that's boring.
Yeah, there was a lot of blood in this.
The whole persona of a vampire revolves around blood.
Yep.
So it should be present. It shouldn't be some weird dry death. Yes. That just doesn't make sense to me. They are drinking a lot of blood. There's blood everywhere. There's blood in them. There's blood in their veins.
Yeah, and it's not neat. Oh, no. Do you know what
Is the Jamie Foxx one? Did they explode bloodily? Did you watch that?
I don't remember what the
It's
Jamie...
called Day Shift, and it has Snoop in it as a vampire hunter. Cowboy.
I have seen that.
Okay.
Yes, of course I saw that.
I'm trying to remember if they were bloody.
I have no idea. I just remember the two of them and how much I love them.
Yes. And the little guy, Franco's little brother.
Yes.
Somebody Franco, obviously. He was amusing.
The Svengoolie movie last night was Scream, Blackula Scream.
Huh?
It was, and I started to watch it and I went, nope, this is, I have, it doesn't require a lot of attention to watch a blaxploitation movie, but it was more than I had at the moment. So I said, I'm just going to save this. I'll watch it later. Mm. It also had voodoo. It had a very young Pam Grier.
Ah, yes.
And she is...
I watched the new Pet Cemetery Bloodlines last night. That's what I watched. And Pamela Grier was in that.
How was it?
It wasn't terrible because it's a prequel. It's young Judd.
Oh.
So I hate a remake, right? So
yeah,
it was not a remake. It was a prequel. And those can also suck. But I didn't think it was bad.
They can suck, but this one did not.
No. I didn't regret watching it after I was done. I'm not going to buy the DVD like I will Abigail.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I was surprised to see Pamela Grier was in that. David Duchovny was in it.
Huh.
Yeah. Kind of disliked him. He came around a little bit at the end though. So, but yeah, I was like, you're a jerk. I don't like it when David Duchovny's a jerk. I
like it when people though are able to break the stereotype.
Well, in Californication, he's kind of a jerk, but he's a charismatic jerk.
I never saw that.
Is that what it's called? Californication?
Californication.
Yes. Okay. So I liked it. I thought the timing was probably poor because it was very sexual, and in real life he had admitted to me having a sex addiction and going to
Yep.
And I was like, "Ooh, maybe you shouldn't have taken this role right now."
Perhaps not.
You're just banging everybody. I don't think that's a good idea. But I could rewatch that one. I've been deciding. I'm like, I'm going to rewatch some things when I'm done with these new shows.
I think I'm going to try to gather up all of the series I have started and liked and finish them. What was the one you mentioned last night?
Oh, God. I don't know.
Because I said, I started that. Why the hell didn't I ever finish it?
Oh, Killing Eve.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been watching that with my daughter.
Loved it. Why didn't I watch it?
So good. And the problem is she's hunting this, this contract killer kind of, but she's a sociopath. And then... But you like her. You like both of them.
Yes.
It's really hard to decide who you want to win at any given time.
What I love, because my big imprint of Sandra Oh was on Grey's Anatomy. Mm-hmm. And she plays a very specific character on Grey's Anatomy.
She was me. That's why I liked that show so much. Because they were me. Like, her and Grey, their personalities, they're kind of... Yes. Kind of withdrawn, unemotional. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my God, it's a show about me. I was so happy.
So in Killing Eve, Sandra Oh's character is very different. Mm-hmm. And that's what I loved about it, that she can do that.
She's in that movie, and I don't remember the name, with Awkwafina, and she's the crazy
I love that.
one.
Yes.
I love seeing Sandra Oh playing all these different things.
Yes.
So
and I also liked Awkwafina
not
being the crazy serious one, being the serious one.
Yeah. Well, and she's a cop in something else that I watched, and she was still pretty amusing in it. But
what was that?
I don't remember. I'm picturing it, and then there's deadly people in it.
Huh?
Nope, it's gone. But
I have one vague image of her standing on a street, and I'm like, "Yep, she's a cop in that." What the hell? What? Oh, who knows?
Because she's so slouchy.
Yeah,
I could always picture her in something because she's so slouchy, which amuses me. I guess we should start because we're each doing 2 topics. We're each doing a true crime and then something like paranormal-ish, UFO-ish, depending on which
I'm just doing weird shit.
Since we don't have a guest. I did feel every 6 months it wouldn't hurt to just not have a guest.
Yeah.
Okay. Ready?
Do it.
I'm not telling you what I'm doing because you won't know what the fuck I'm talking about anyway. Doesn't even have a title.
Are you talking to the listeners or
Everybody.
to me specifically?
Everybody.
I'm like, well, that's kind of harsh. I feel kind of bad now.
The only reason I heard about that, there is a documentary out about it right now. It auto-played after something I was watching, and I was super confused at first because I was doing something. So I was up doing the thing and kind of passively watching. It was Couple Killers or something like that. So it was about couples that Right. And then this plays, and so I'm waiting for who the couple is, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And then I was like, well, it's a crime thing. Okay. And then after that, it auto-played something about some terrible dude in the... What is he? A Mormon guy. And I was like, where's the couple? Who's going to die? And then nobody died. It was just a complete LDS, about the LDS church. FLDS, they were saying. And so I'm waiting, right? I'm just waiting for somebody to die as I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And I'm like, why is nobody dying? What the fuck is this?
You've just described me watching TV on a Saturday night, and I fall asleep and I wake up and I look at the TV like it's still where I left off, and I'm so confused.
It's what I do, but it's because I'm always working and watching it, or cleaning and watching, So I don't even remember what I was doing. I just know that I was super confused, and I was like, well, whatever, I'm busy. Oh, I think I might have been making Jeff's birthday cake.
Ooh.
So I was in the kitchen doing things and just kind of passively watching it and being really confused. All right. Picture this.
Sicily.
1940. Okay. You're at home relaxing, playing your favorite game, when a friend comes on the game and says he's going to kill his entire family. Suddenly, gameplay is switched to investigation. Is he joking? Is it real? He's a troll, so he lies a lot. In this story, we're discussing a game called Perfect World, where players create characters for themselves and roam around a fantasy-type world. Players choose their race, elf, human, etc., and customize the character's looks and their abilities. They can choose different worlds to go into and give themselves different abilities. You can get quests and interact with other characters. It's considered an MMORPG, or massively multiplayer online role-playing game. There are a ton of these out there, and they're a popular form of escapism and gameplay. This game also had a Discord server where folks could chat with each other. So it's just like a separate place. A lot of gamers use it, for those unfamiliar with it. On July 27th, 2019, a member named Only Minhas, here's the thing, it's whatever name you give yourself on these online games. You don't even know if these are people's real names, if they're made up. Minhas showed up. He was known as a troll in the community, meaning he often lied and set out to upset others. They intentionally, we all know trolls at this point. Mm-hmm. People from all over the world played the game, and as people chose what their display names were, they didn't have to be real names. Minhas was known to make anti-Muslim statements, use the N-word, and otherwise rile up other players. But he also had folks on there who could consider themselves friends. Now, his best friends on there were all also trolls. An area they played in was called Void, created by players to do more of what they wanted, which was more combat, just open combat type stuff. Mm-hmm. More was allowed in this space than in some other spaces, but trolling was extremely common in this game. One person being interviewed said if you weren't a troll in the game, you'd be a victim. Oh. So just a lot of... They said it was a really toxic kind of culture on there.
Then why would you want to play it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Minhas was respected as a player in the game, though, because he was good at it. But they were also aware that he was going to try to cause issues if he was hanging out. He was also seen as pretty funny. Like, afterwards, people are talking about him in this documentary, and they're like, he's funny. Moderators were in charge of monitoring how other players treated each other, and there were bannable issues. Mm-hmm. So you could get banned for bad behavior, but it seems like a lot of bad behavior was let go. But Minhas was friends with at least one of the developers who was also a moderator. So this gave him an in after he was banned. The guy admitted it. He was like, yeah, he got banned for this. And then he'd come on and be like, hey, I want to play today. And I'd let him in. On this otherwise normal July day, a group of folks signed in. Minhas was on as well playing, and he popped into the Discord chat. Then he sent a message in a group chat saying he was going to do it. He was going to kill his family. He was going to go to jail for it. This was it. No one believed him at first, of course, know. But then a photo came through the chat. It was a dead woman. Hair and blood haloed out from her head. He told them it was his mom. It was about 3 p.m. Eastern time.
Oh, my God.
A young man named John, a Jordanian medical student living in Egypt, asked him if it was real. John was the first one to really feel like this was legitimate. Everybody else was like, no. Minhas said it was. So John went into a different room in Discord. You can have all these different conversations and rooms going. Started a conversation showing others what Minhas had posted elsewhere. They started pulling more people into this chat, sharing the photo and trying to figure out if it was real. A young woman named Nicole, who was a criminal justice student in North Carolina, became involved. She was familiar with real crime scene photos, so while some were dismissing it as entirely fake, she let them know those were very real wounds in the image. She knew that much at least. They pulled in Maroon, a developer of the game and a moderator, who thought there was a good chance it was real. He felt it was out of character. Two men who enjoyed trolling in the game saw it and thought it was completely fake. Adrian and Alex, one from Romania, one from Belgium, felt he was pulling off the ultimate trolling, and they saw it as impressive. Now, they were talking to them afterwards, and the one guy was like, that did not age well, the stuff that I said to him, but I truly thought he was kidding. So they were like, you're pulling off the ultimate troll, bro. This is, But then about an hour later, a second photo came through. This one was an even older woman than the first, also splayed on the carpet, clearly dead, surrounded by blood. He told them it was his grandmother. This left some thinking he had overdone the joke now, right? They're like, it's not funny anymore, dude. Enough. And he was no longer being creative, and others sensing this was not a troll. This was very real. Hoping these were crime scene photos pulled from the web, John sent the photos out to a group of people, including that person, Nicole, and they started searching to see if they could find these as already existing photos online. Right. Nicole saw knife lacerations on the throat, and the amount of blood indicated an artery had been cut. She did a Google reverse image search. Then she went to a 4chan board specifically intended to post shocking pictures. Searching turned up nothing similar to the photos he'd sent. Next was Yandex, a Russian search site where one could search by pieces of an image. She tried the whole thing first, and then she was able to zoom in on a face and that sort of thing. And sometimes you get better results on that one. Nicole set about reverse image searching various parts of both of the pictures, including the faces. Still nothing turned up. If he just grabbed a random photo off the web, they should have come up in the in-depth searches she was doing. Because how long would he have looked, right? He would have found something that popped up early.
If he was just trolling, he's not going to put...
No, not that much effort. No. Now, John and Nicole became frantic to figure out what was going on. Everyone else still seemed to think it was a prank. Austin, another developer and moderator, called the police where he lived in Texas. Maroon also called the authorities where he was, but they didn't know the player's real name or his location. Police didn't take them seriously. Austin got hung up on.
Oh.
There was now a group of online friends trying to figure out what to do. They are frantic, right? They pulled in Junior, who was considered to be best friends with Minhas, and another very negative troll. Junior was in Costa Rica, and outside of the game, they had serious talks and supported each other. Junior had actually been going through cancer treatment and wasn't necessarily going to make it, but he did. He was on the documentary. They told him what was going on and asked him for help. So Junior contacted Minhas individually and told him he was worried about what people were saying. Minhas immediately told Junior he truly killed his mom and grandma. He said, you're not going to be happy about this, but it's real.
Wow.
I did it. I'm not done.
Oh my God.
Then Minhas told him he was going to kill his sister and dad. Ugh. They were at work, so he was just waiting. He was just biding his time until they got home. In the meantime, Minhas was taking turns napping and playing the game. Completely sociopathic behavior.
Oh my God.
Other than at one point saying he said, oh, I'm shaking. There was no other indication of guilt, concern, nothing. At this point, it was about 9 p.m. Eastern time. So he had killed his mother 6 hours before.
Wow.
His grandmother 5 hours before. He was still in the home where their dead bodies lay. Despite being friends who had discussed some very serious things, Junior also didn't know the rest of Minhas's name or where he lived. And I think a lot of people don't understand how close you can get with people online. Mm-hmm. I did via a mother's group I was in that had actually sprung out from, I was in an IVF group when I was undergoing IVF. Mm-hmm. And then it became a expecting group in a different month. So we knew a lot about each other because there wasn't some of the BS that you do in person.
Right.
You're having real conversations with these people. He had told people Minhas was his real first name, so they decided to run with that. A search showed that Minhas is a Bengali name, they said, but I'm not sure if that's the right term, and you'll see why later, so I'm just not sure. But things he'd said indicated he didn't live there. They tried searching the name, but there were too many people with that name or similar. It wasn't uncommon. Old conversations were full of differing stories. And remember, they don't know where he's living, so they're just searching Minhas, internationally, globally.
Oh.
He said things about living around Spanish speakers, living in Brazil, living in Canada, etc. He said he was an engineering student. So they're just combing through, trying to find anything they can. By this time, the trolls had joined the hunt, realizing this was most likely real as well. They determined from things he'd said that he was in the Eastern time zone, but that only narrowed it down to Canada, the U.S., and South America along that Eastern section, right? They realized they could track his IP from the void and went to Austin to try to get the information. Austin was able to get the IP he'd used last, which gave them slightly more information. Now they knew he was in or around Toronto, Canada.
Ooh.
But without a last name, this was still an issue. He'd said he lived with his parents, so his name isn't going to be on anything, right?
Right.
So Minhas likely wouldn't have a phone number or address in his name. Might have a cell phone, but if his parents are paying for it, doesn't matter. So, first name, useless. As all this was going on, Junior kept talking to Minhas. He's trying to distract him while they're doing this. They're all trying to gain as much time as they can because they're trying to save the sister and the dad.
Right.
And they're desperate at this point, frantic. Then not long before 11 p.m., Minhas told Junior his sister was coming home in 5 minutes and promptly jumped back into the game, playing like nothing was going on. Luckily, this allowed Austin to trace his current IP address from the game, while Junior continued chatting and playing with him in an attempt to stall him. Maybe they could get police to him before he killed her. The new IP gave them a street, Bloor Street in Toronto, Canada. They went to Google and found a massive apartment building, or some sort of massive building. Austin found a phone number for the apartment building, and Nicole tried, hoping they would reach a landlord, and the landlord would be able to figure out who it was.
And they could say, we're looking for a guy. Okay. Who lives with his mother, his grandmother.
Yeah. Instead, Nicole reached the service provider. That was the address. The service provider. It was Rogers, which is a big provider in Canada. They racked their brains trying to find another way to track him down, frantically typing messages to each other in these groups. Junior, again, frantically trying to engage Minhas. Then Minhas messaged the group chat he was in, BRB. Oh. Be right back. And he disappeared. It wasn't long before he turned up again. Say 10, 15 minutes. He direct messaged John and said, my sister just came home. It was a tough battle. She was a trooper.
Oh.
Then the picture came through. This photo showed the fight he talked about. There were blankets or clothing items pulled down over her. Her clothes were messed up. She was wearing her work uniform and name tag still. Minhas said she fought for 10 minutes and that she cried.
Well, yeah.
Oddly, he also apologized for the mess, saying it was the guest room and his mom had been pulling clothes out of the closet earlier to do some sorting. He said, I used the clothes to cover up all the blood. She was the only one he covered anything on. I think she was the one he felt bad about. Because she's a little bit covered with the clothing and stuff compared to the others where I just see carpet and blood and all of the blood is covered. He's hiding what he's done, right? He doesn't want to see what he did to her, in my opinion. His next messages, still just to John at this point, were that his dad was due home in an hour. This gave the other players one more hour to save one person. John kept talking to him about the crimes, hoping to get more clues. He wasn't responding to Junior anymore. He asked what the weapon was, and for Minhas to send him a photo of himself and the weapon. First picture was of, you just see his hand and a crowbar.
Right.
Then a knife covered in blood, like a butcher-style knife. Next came a selfie of him holding the knife up. His face is pretty neutral. He's not smiling. He doesn't look upset. He kind of looks a little grim. Minhas called his dad to see how far away he was. 30 minutes and he'd be home, Minhas told John. The others strategized and searched while John offered to help Minhas and convince him not to do anything more. He asked questions about his dad, said, well, he's always seemed like a good guy when you talk to me, you know? And so bear in mind that at this point, it was 6:30 a.m. for John in Egypt, and he, along with the others, had been on for hours trying to stop these murders. God. All of a sudden, Minhas told John he just found out that John was sharing the photos he was sending him. Somebody told.
Oh.
And he left the discussion with John, no longer replying to him. I don't know. I never found out who told.
Huh.
Austin's phone rang. It was a video request from Minhas, and Austin was the developer and moderator down in Texas. Minhas showed the knife. He's videoing, right? And then he walked around with the phone showing Austin each of the bodies.
Oh, my God.
Asking, do you need more proof? Do you still think I'm lying? Minhas told Austin he was waiting for his dad to arrive, saying his dad would be able to overpower him if he didn't surprise him.
Oh, my God.
I think his sister had shaken him up because she fought so hard.
As one does.
Yeah, right? Then he hung up.
Oh.
They tried messaging him. No response. The only response Coming a little later was the photo of a dead man, the bloody knife laying on his chest, and some bloody, gloves. Austin went to the global chat and sent out a call for someone from Canada to help reach police. No one in Canada responded, but someone did suggest someone named Dante, who lived in Minnesota and was friends with Minhas. They were able to reach him, and he called St. Paul police, who patched him through to Toronto police after he told them that a friend in Toronto had just told him he'd killed his whole family. Toronto police sent it. It was so Canadian too, because he's sitting there and they're asking him questions. I listened to the call, right? Mm-hmm. And he's shaken up. And he's finally like, I'm sorry. This is a lot. And she's like, I'm sorry. You're right. This is a lot that you've been going through. Do you need me to send somebody through your house? Very kind and very,
very Canadian.
Yes. Toronto police sent a written request to Discord in an attempt to get any information on the account from Minhas. They got a generic email saying they'd hear back soon. It said usually within the next half hour. Minhas contacted John again and indicated he missed his family. Well, what do you think? He sent a happy family photo from the past. It was a birthday party or something.
Oh my
his
God.
mom and dad are holding a knife and cutting a cake together. His sister is there. So, yeah. He said they'd all loved each other, but that he was just so messed up, man. Actually, it's bro. They used the bro so much in the exchanges. Hours later, Discord sent police the IP, which now led police to Rogers, the service provider. They sent a written request for information for that IP address and told them the perpetrator had killed people. Rogers sent them an address in Markham, a nice suburban neighborhood where a young man peered out at them from a second-story window as the police drove up. Side note here, the Discord users in an early Vice article said it was actually another Discord user named Bianca who tracked down the address via a PayPal exchange she'd had with Minhas, and that she called police with the address. So there's some different stories here. Minhas messaged John that the police were there and he was gone yet again. It was 3 p.m. on the 28th, exactly 24 hours after all of this had begun. Minhas, whose last name was Zaman, let police in, and when asked if his family's okay, he simply said, "You'll see."
Oh.
The family members were all where he'd killed them. His mother and grandmother were in the master bedroom on the floor. His sister was in the guest room. His father was in his sister's room. I'm wondering how he lured him up there and what he said. There were no tears, no anger, no real emotion at all. The first thing the officer asked was why he was there in the police department. So they've got him in the little room on camera. I did watch that as well. And Minhas answered, because 4 of my family members are dead. Because of me. So he admitted it right from the beginning. We've discussed family annihilators before. Mm-hmm. This is where he was categorized by the cops. It was explained that the family annihilator is one type of mass murderer that is distinguished by being extremely narcissistic, which absolutely matches everything I've ever read about these fuckers. Because there's always some selfish reason, right? Mm-hmm. I did John List. He's the big, well-known one. He'd lost his job and not told his family. And so he didn't want them to be ashamed of him or whatever. And he felt his kids, especially his teenage daughter, were moving away from God and going to dark places, right? He had all these things he was justifying to himself. Minhas insisted to police that he loved his family. He wouldn't answer questions about what had happened, how his sister had responded. To these types of questions, he said, I'd like to remain silent. Every single time, I'd like to remain silent. When asked if he told anyone he was going to do this, Minhas refused to respond, saying the same line, I'd like to remain silent. He was calm, but his leg was bouncing during the interview and his arms were crossed over his chest. So there is some defense happening here, right? He said some things that indicated different motives, such as mentioning his family was Muslim, but he had become an atheist after taking a bunch of science classes, is what he said. The online friends agreed that he had fights with his family about his atheism. However, to the police, he said his parents had actually been very understanding and had not forced him to go to religious ceremonies or to dress in their traditional garb. And that family photo he'd sent John actually backed this up. Everybody else was in traditional clothing. He had on a Nike t-shirt. No tension in the photo, they had actual people who were tenants in the basement, but at that time they didn't have any, luckily. And when they talked to him, they were like, he was perfectly loving. He took out the trash. He cleared the snow off the sidewalks. They were proud of him. There weren't fights.
Right. Wow.
He messaged his friend group from the game one more time to tell them what he had done. He said he'd been planning this for 3 years. His family thought he was graduating with a degree in mechanical engineering from York University the next day. On the 28th was supposed to be the graduation day. But he had actually failed out of Seneca College in the first year and never told them. 2 semesters he made it. Instead, going to the mall and other places during school hours or when he knew nobody would be home, being at home gaming. He said he didn't want his family to be ashamed of him, so he had to kill them before they discovered he was a failure.
No.
He told police he'd been too interested in gaming to take his studies seriously and that he wished he'd never started gaming. He also told police and other individuals that things might have been better if his parents weren't so strict, but that they couldn't help it because they were immigrants who had worked hard their entire lives and wanted him to be successful. He's just like all these contrasts.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of his police interview, he asked if he had to go back to the same area. This exchange was great on the documentary. The cop said, yeah. Minhas complained about it being uncomfortable. The cop said, well, it's prison. So then he asked, he was like, can I get a pillow, a blanket, something? And the cop pointed out, he said, you're in here because you just killed your entire family. And you're asking to be made more comfortable.
You're asking for a pillow and
he just kind of shrugged and was like, yeah.
Oh my God.
And he was neutral polite through like this whole interview process. Wow. And now too. And the cop ultimately, he was like, yeah, no, you're not getting anything like that. Not because you just killed your family, because we don't have it to offer you. It's prison. He's like, I think he was just so blown away. Oh, wow. He'd been patient and listened to like the narcissistic bullshit pouring out of this kid's mouth. And then like this pillow thing was kind of like, he's like, seriously? Yeah, I know. The police investigation showed he had hit each family member with a crowbar first, then slit their throats. And they were like, slitting somebody's throat that way is one of the most intense ways you can kill somebody. Mm-hmm. And he did it 4 times with no hesitation.
Wow.
With his sister, of course, there was a greater struggle. That was obvious. The police investigation. Okay, so the victims were his mom, 50-year-old Momtaz Begum. I'm going to butcher these. His grandmother, 70-year-old Feroza Begum. His sister, 21-year-old Malaysa Zaman, who hoped to become a neurosurgeon. She was in school for that. And his father, 59-year-old Moniroz Zaman. They were from Bangladesh. And that's why I don't know if Bengali was correct, because that makes me think.
Right.
But maybe Bengali is like from Bangladesh. I don't know.
Okay. I don't either.
In November 2020, he was convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of second-degree murder. That never was explained. The best I could figure, the second-degree murder was for the first murder because they couldn't prove it was planned, I suspect. But it was very obvious he had planned the rest out. So those were first-degree. He received life sentences to be served concurrently and has no chance for parole until 40 years have passed. He'll be in his 60s at that time. He'll be older than his parents made it to.
Oh.
Those subjected to his messages in that traumatic 24 hours, these kids were doing their best.
Oh, God. That's awful.
They feel he should never get out.
Yeah.
They're like, are you kidding me? He was so blasé about the entire thing. Like, he should not get out. He is not okay.
No.
Some of them had to get counseling, obviously.
Well, I would hope so.
After that ordeal. Most ultimately left the game, though it had been a refuge for them before, so he also stripped that away from them.
Yep.
They expressed, this killed me. Like, watching, I felt so bad for him. They expressed so much guilt that they couldn't stop it, that they didn't figure out there was something wrong with him sooner. They had tried so hard to save these people, but their hands were tied. I don't think there was anything that they could have known to do that they didn't do.
No, and a lot of people go into these games and do act out, and they act out in the game in ways that they can't or won't or wouldn't act in real life. So you can't, just because somebody's acting like a whatever in the game, doesn't mean they're like that in real life.
Well, and one of them found he had said a year before, I'm going to kill my parents in April, and then he didn't. So he was like, why would I have believed him the second time? So anyway, just for the record, it is an interesting documentary because you get to hear it from the kids' points of view. I mean, they're not really kids anymore, but they were college students and high school students. And so my sources, Perfect World, A Deadly Game. The documentary is on Peacock. I primarily use this timeline for the chats. and when the photos came through and stuff. The Toronto Star, which was the big place they used for the timeline for the murders and his school stuff, the motive is actually not on the documentary. So I don't know if they didn't realize it at that time. I don't know. And there are some things that conflict between the two of them. I was able to kind of match up because, for example, when they talked about Dante in Minnesota, he actually came up sooner in all of this, being involved in some of the chat, but he wasn't in the documentary. So I think they just left him out. Maybe he didn't want to be.
Yeah.
And his name was, they had mentioned in the documentary Dante, and they said they thought his real name was Devante. And so in the articles, he was Devante. So some things like that line up, and there's probably others that I didn't get lined up. Who knows? CTV News, UK Independent, and CBC News.
I'm guessing when his father came home, he said to his father, there's something wrong with my sister. She's in her bedroom. Quickly, come. And then when he walked through the door, bang in the head with the...
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm.
That's so awful. That's so awful. And not only is it awful that he did it, but that he inflicted it on so many people.
Right. Because they were all victims of his too, in my opinion, because they got dragged into this. And I guarantee you there's PTSD involved. That's 24 hours of intense trauma.
Yes.
And they did, of course, after they reached that cops, ultimately, Dante does, they're cut out. They don't know anything until an article popped up saying, what was the city, Markham or something like that? Markham man arrested, suspected of killing 4 family members or something. And so that's how they figured out who it was and got the information. But his name wasn't released yet, So that's them going, okay, I think that's him. And they were showing how they were discussing that and everything. But yeah, it was pretty...
That's twisted.
It's terribly
twisted. That's very twisted.
Because he's like, yeah, I'm going to jail, Please to hear. The BRB, though, like, that was the most chilling part right there. They're just so desperate to save his sister. And then the BRB, and he's gone. Because you can see when somebody is left.
Right.
And the fact that they all sat there. Had to sit there for 10 or 15 minutes or whatever it was.
Oh, God.
And just wait. Knowing what was happening and knowing they couldn't do a goddamn thing about it. Like, that's intense.
That is horrific.
That's like, that's some soldier level, cop level trauma, that sort of shit where it just, they couldn't do anything and they were forced almost. I mean, I know they weren't literally watching it, but they were basically forced to watch these murders.
Yeah.
Over a period of, so it was 3 p.m. to the last murder at midnight, 9 hours for that part. And then trying to get the police to him after that.
That's just unbelievable. That's awful.
I know. I heard this and I was like, okay, this is a different kind of story. I had other things planned. And I was like, nope, this is the one I'm talking about.
Yeah. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you just come across something and go, well, this is what I'm talking about now.
Right? I mean, I was on early chat boards. There were all sorts of early chat boards.
Oh, yes.
Ting, ting, ting. That's why I went on my modem to sign on, and then we got all these delays.
Yep.
Oh, yes. And it was just this scrolling thing at that point, so it would go so fast. If there were too many people talking, you couldn't follow everything that was happening. So, it's like, I started and all that, and I've been a part of forums. I was not a gamer, so that. But, yeah, the rest of it, just like...
And people used to be very trusting on forums, and they'd be like,
oh, we did meetups, and I was in high school.
Meetups, and, give me your address, and I'll send this to you. And they did, that's the thing, they did. People would send you a box of baby clothes, or a book. Or...
Now, I never did give out my address, but we did the meetups, and the thing is, we would use our call sign, our names, from there in person, like this is Smurf was one of them. And I don't even remember what my name was, but that's because Smurf came to mean something entirely different. Because a lot of times, here we go, meet up, we high school girls, we would go in a group at least, always. Well, some of my friends were idiots. But anyway, they proved that over and over again. But I always just went with a group. I did not meet up one-on-one with them. But then it would be these older guys. Yeah. So we were already in that place. Yeah. But again, in the bulletin board for the moms, they can also be great places. And there was a ton of toxicity on there, let me tell you.
Yep.
A bunch of hormonal women. Are you shitting me? And then even years into it, they're constantly getting pregnant again and stuff. There's always pregnant women and postpartum women. That shit was insane, and I adminned that shit. Never again.
Yeah. Hormonal women are.
Never again. And if y'all think Canadians are peaceful, some of them choose evil every day. I'm just telling you right now, because there was a group of them that were extremely toxic and like to purposely root things out and pick fights and stuff. So yeah.
Yuck. They're giving
I
Canadians
understood the
a bad
toxic
name.
part of it for certain.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's much more chilling than what I'm going to talk about.
That's why it was first.
Yes. So I'm going to take a roundabout way to get there. So for anybody who isn't aware, so I'm going to start with me because I'm going to talk about Muncie, Indiana. And so and I'm going to tell you how I got there, because why not? So if anybody doesn't know this about me, I graduated from college in 3 years. So before anybody, you tell people that, they're just like, ooh, like you're some fucking genius. And I'm like, no, I'm cheap. Is what it was.
That's exactly why I graduated and did it so fast with my business degree.
Exactly. So a dear friend of mine who is a listener, pointed out to me that taking a semester over the summer was substantially cheaper than taking a regular semester. And not only that, it was over the summer, so you were living at home and you didn't have to pay room and board and blah, blah, blah. So she was like, if we do 2 summer semesters, we can graduate a year early. And I just went, I was astounded. I was like, this is available to everybody. You can just do this. So I was like, sign me the fuck up. So, because yay, saving money. So this meant I graduated college at the age of 20 with absolutely no fucking clue. Pretty much about everything I can say now, but I'll just say what I wanted to do with my life. So, but I had figured out I was good at school. So I thought I was. So I did what seemed like a good idea at the time, and I went to graduate school. So I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill to study sociology, which is slightly more practical than, say, philosophy, but only slightly. Which is an unfair thing to say because I have friends who've gone on successfully in that field. But in grad school, I made friends with a wonderful woman whose name was Leslie, who was she was just a very calm and non-judgmental presence in my life. Everybody else was very competitive and very, why are you here? And, just all about school and striving. And she was just very laid back. So she was kind of a lifeline at a time when I was floundering. So recently I discovered that Leslie has moved to the state of Colorado. She's not here where we are, but she's still within driving distance. So I met up with her a couple of weeks ago and we got talking about family, as you do. Oh, who's here and what's doing. Sadly, her dad has passed away. I'd met him. He was a lovely gentleman. So she mentioned that her mother now lives in Muncie, Indiana. And I was like, and Leslie's just like, Muncie, it is the middle of nowhere. It is the definition of nowhere. And I was like, how have I never driven past it or driven near it? She's like, it's not near anything. There's nothing interesting there. There's no reason why you would ever go there. And I'm like, no, I once went to, Mitchell, South Dakota to go to the Corn Palace. And I was on my way from Colorado to Virginia, so it was not on the way.
Okay.
That's how I road trip, people. So anyway, I thought I'm going to see what weird shit happens in Muncie. That is how we got here. And I actually typed in what weird shit happens in Muncie. And for the size of the town, a lot of weird shit happens in Muncie.
Okay.
So one of the bigger features of Muncie was the Ball Brothers Glass Manufacturing Company, which had originally incorporated in New York, but moved to Muncie in 1887 and began producing glass jars the following year. So this is like canning jars, like Ball Arena. That's the same people.
Okay.
Ball canning jars. They eventually diversified into other products, and they closed the Muncie plant in 1962, but they kept the corporate offices there until 1998. I'm like, were you just watching the town die around you? It sounds like.
Yeah.
So I told you about the Ball Brothers. Besides, it's fun to say. Remind me later, there's a writing conference I have to tell you the name of, but I got to look it up on my phone because it's just the weirdest fucking little name of a writer's conference that I was like, I want to go just because of the name. So, Ball Brothers. On December 23rd, 1920, 45-year-old George Kling was shot to death in the corrugated paper room of the box factory at Ball Brothers. The killer was 30-year-old Hallett McHarg, who was a World War I veteran who clocked into work at 6:30 a.m., saw Kling bending over a machine, said, and this is well documented, said, "Hello, Dutch," and shot him twice.
Hi.
The newspaper reports that McHarg walked over to the man writhing in death agony, because, yellow journalism was the thing, on the floor and shot him 4 more times. Then he went to the office and asked one of his coworkers to please call the police, to whom he surrendered peacefully.
Great.
So it was funny because they're doing a little bit of, the background. And there was a nearby restaurant where he always stopped for breakfast at like 6 a.m. And they said when he stopped for breakfast that day, he seemed to be laboring under a mental strain. And I'm like, how the fuck do you determine that? And was in a pensive mood. So he had been in Muncie only 3 to 4 months and had been involved in an altercation with Kling. Kling had told other workers that McHarg was not fit to talk with women and instructed them not to talk to him. So when McHarg confronted Kling, a fight broke out. Kling got punched in the jaw, knocked to the ground, and he responded by pulling a knife, and 2 other guys stepped in and broke the fight up. McHarg cited all of this in his confession, which the Daily Paper printed on the front page. His written confession. I'm like, wow, people were a lot more literate in 1920 than they are now. Because it was a very well-written piece of,
That's right. Everything sounded formal then, though.
Yeah, it did.
You're like writing to your best friend, and you're still like, on this day, and
Well, the person at the restaurant who said he was in a pensive mood.
right. Oh,
Okay.
now people are like, what does that mean?
So, this was not the first murder to happen at this Ball Brothers plant. So, in 1915, which was just 5 years earlier, 40-year-old Frank Deem was killed there. So, he was considered, I love the way they phrase this, he was considered an upstanding citizen. It's like, really? What are the qualifications for that? He wasn't a public drunk? I don't know. But he was also one of Ball's most popular employees. And when he began work that morning, this is in 1915, he caught 2 other employees, John Craig and Earl Hopper, shooting crabs. Their age was disputed. So, but they were like late teens, early 20s. They were like 19, 20, around there. So young guys who didn't know what they were doing. But they had been warned previously about wasting company time, so Deem fired them on the spot. They left, returned in the afternoon for their pay, which they got. They said they had been shorted by 15 hours. Deem told them to get out, but they refused, and they came toward him and shoved him, and a fight started. And he got pushed to the ground, and Craig pulled out a knife and just repeatedly stabbed Deem. Deem died of his injuries, it said within a half hour. And I'm like, that's some stabbing, because you can live for a while with a stab wound.
Yeah.
By which time Craig and Hopper had exited the building and split up. Fortunately, for all involved, they were not criminal geniuses. Craig went to his father's house. His father took the knife and gave him some money. Craig was planning to jump on a freight train, but the railroad officials had already been warned to look for him, so they soon caught him. Hopper just went to his father's house, where he was arrested about an hour after the crime. Yeah. Both men went to jail for their crimes, and both were released early, although it wasn't clear why they were released early. Hopper sort of disappeared. He got in some minor trouble with the law after that. But Craig, in 1930, shot and killed his ex-wife, shot her boss, and then turned the gun on himself. So yeah, that was a good idea, letting him out early. So there are much more recent unsolved mysteries lurking in Muncie. In January 29th, of 1999, a postal carrier was kind of on the outskirts of town and came across the nude body of a woman face down in the water of a drainage ditch by the side of the road. She drove, because 99, people didn't always have cell phones. She drove to a nearby factory and called for help, called the police. She was hoping it was like a dummy or a mannequin or something. Sadly, that was not to be. The body belonged to 43-year-old Joni Michelle Brooks. And this is just this is a horrible story. She was a mother of 5 who had been fighting a crack cocaine addiction for the last 10 years of her life. Some of the police officer at the scene recognized her because she'd been arrested 20 times since the late 1980s, often for prostitution. And when I say the late 1980s, that was after 1987.
Okay.
So the very end, 20 times she'd been arrested. The autopsy later showed that she had drowned in the 8 inches of water running through the ditch, and the level of cocaine in her body indicated she had probably been unconscious before she hit the water. She had also suffered blunt force trauma to her head, torso, arms, and legs, although not sufficient to kill her. Her story is what's so awful. She was a small-town girl who moved to Muncie in her mid-teens. She graduated high school, she went on, she became a nurse, she got married, and reportedly loved being a mother to her 5 kids. In May of 1987, she somehow fell from her family's van while it was moving down the street and struck her head on the pavement. Her friends and family say the Joni they knew never came home again after the traumatic brain injury that she suffered. So that was when everything went south for her. She began running afoul of the law. She did do a short stint in prison. While she was in prison, she didn't have access to drugs. And she cleaned up. And the judge was so impressed with her rehab, with her attitude, with her behavior, that he released her to serve the rest of her sentence on parole. But if she had access to drugs, she just physically could not stop herself. So she became addicted again.
But there's not, just like so many other mental health things, there's not nearly enough support for people who get traumatic brain injury. No. And in society, they get mocked for it. They get, because I watched my mom go through that. I watched a friend go through that. Mm-hmm. People are actually super cruel about some of it. Like if you slur your speech after it happens, for example, or if you forget things in the middle of saying them or stuff like that. Like it's pretty terrible.
So despite dozens of interviews with people who knew Brooks, the investigation rapidly went cold. Police can't say if she accidentally ended up in the ditch on her own or if she was with people and she overdosed and they tried to dump the body. Whatever happened to her that night, she didn't deserve to be abandoned face down in a ditch on a January night. It was just, the people don't understand brain injuries. Well, I mean, doctors don't understand them that well either, but you never know. So another unsolved murder from Muncie. This is the one I mentioned to you last night. Garth Rector came from a family that had always been involved with high school wrestling. So he later became a wrestling coach at several local high schools, which gave him kind of a high profile because he was a winning coach. He was successful. He was very well liked. In 2007, mid to late 2007, Garth separated from his wife, but he was hoping that a family trip to California would help him reconcile, would help the two of them reconcile. At least that's what his sister says. On March 21st of 2008, Garth's landlord, who was a woman he had dated during his separation, drove by his house. She also lived on the same property, not in the same house, but it was, I think they said 200 yards away. So she drove by and she was concerned because his lights weren't on and she knew he was supposed to be packing for this big trip. So she stopped by the house to check on him and found him dead on the kitchen floor, having been shot 5 times. The autopsy later stated that 48-year-old Garth had probably died quickly after being shot and also said there were no drugs in his system, but he had been drinking. There was, he was intoxicated, like not snot-slinging drunk, but he'd had enough to drink that he was probably somewhat intoxicated, which still doesn't mean he should have been shot 5 times. Police seem to believe, and I don't dispute this, that this was a crime of passion committed either by a woman Garth had been dating or perhaps a jealous or jilted male who had formerly been attached to one of those women. While the police questioned several people, no arrest has ever been made. The family is still offering a cash reward. I want to say it's $10,000 for information, but there have been no takers. So one report I read said that his wedding ring was missing from the scene, but I only saw that in one place.
Okay.
I didn't see it in, like that might have been one of the online sources. It was not in the newspaper. I do want to point out, I can't remember if I say this later or not, I do, so I'll save it for there. One of the suspects was the husband of a coworker Garth had had an affair with several years earlier, who was uncooperative with the investigation because he was still very bitter and angry about what happened. The landlord who found his body was another suspect, but apparently she was very cooperative with the police. Another suspect was the landlord's ex-fiance, who she had broken up with shortly before his murder, but he also cooperated with the police and passed a polygraph, for whatever that's worth.
Okay.
None of the stories that I read, and they were in different newspapers, none of them contained any quotes from the ex-wife he was supposed to be reconciling with, just from his sister. She commented that Garth liked the ladies and the ladies liked him. The fact that he was shot 5 times makes it seem likely that whoever shot him was pissed off and really wanted him dead. If it was a robbery, they would have shot him once and gotten on with it.
It was personal.
It was, yeah, the police believe it was personal. And there was a lot of speculation about, is this the kind of secret that someone can take to the grave? Or is guilt eventually going to make someone come forward?
Maybe they felt real good about it afterwards. They're not going to come forward.
Could be. The last newspaper article I read said that the police still get leads, but that nothing has panned out yet. So while
it's not a big town, right?
It's not. And what has happened is they're investigating other crimes and they'll get something that refers back to this, but nothing substantial, nothing that they can take to a judge, nothing they can take to a jury. So it sounded like, even because sometimes you can tell the police are thinking it's so and so, but they don't have enough evidence. No, it sounds like the police are like, it could have been any of these people, because apparently there were more women and more exes than were mentioned in the article. Those were just the more reason. But he liked the ladies and the ladies liked him, and I was like,
it just makes me roll my eyes.
Yeah, I'm like, what kind of a statement is that? And I found it interesting that his wife wasn't like, and he did have a teenage daughter. I'm not surprised she's not quoted. But if you were going to reconcile with this man, I would think she would have been interviewed or she would have commented or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know if she was investigated.
I'm sure she would be.
She had to have been. But yeah, it sounded like there was a whole lot going on that they weren't specifying.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that's another Muncie unsolved. So
small town, big town problems.
They're murderous people in Muncie. I could call it murderous Muncie.
If you're thinking of starting a podcast or even just starting to research it, Buzzsprout is your go-to source for information and hosting. They have tons of videos and write-ups on everything you need to know about recording and distributing a podcast, and they even provide easy ways to get analytics on how your podcast is doing. We use Buzzsprout for our podcast hosting, and through them we've been able to connect with tons of resources and distributors. Following a link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and help support our show. A win-win. Not only do they help you get started, but they also do small things to encourage you, such as awarding you badges as you hit various milestones. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world.
What you got next?
Okay. This is the U.S. Air Force, CIA, and UFO sightings.
Ooh.
I found this report, and I was kind of popping things off of that. According to a piece in Studies in Intelligence, which was the report I found, it was the beginning of the Cold War that set off waves of UFO sightings around 1947, which also happens to be the year the Roswell incident occurred.
Oh.
The Air Force was tasked with investigating sightings, starting with the 1948's Air Technical Service Command Project Saucer, which got renamed Project Sign. It was thought at this time that UFOs could be a national security threat. Which really just mimics all the movies that we see about it. And if it was Mars attacks, it would be a national security threat.
Yes.
The Technical Intelligence Division of the Air Material, there are so many different departments. Air Material Command in Ohio took over in 1948 and decided that UFOs were real, but only in the sense that they were either mass hysteria, hallucinations, hoaxes, or a misrepresentation of known objects. So they're not real.
Opposite
they're real,
of real.
But they're not real.
Okay.
But I guess what they were saying was, like, with the misrepresentation of known objects, they were like, people aren't lying.
Okay.
Unless it's the hoaxes part, which is, that doesn't make any sense in that sentence.
No.
But whatever. Despite this, it was felt that the Air Force should continue taking charge in the case of any and all UFO sightings, and a report admitted that there might be extraterrestrial phenomena.
Ooh.
Woo, woo, woo.
The truth is out there.
That's right. I was about to say it. What had started these sightings and given them credence was a highly respected pilot named Kenneth Arnold. He was flying near Mount Rainier when he saw 9 glowing objects flying in a V formation over the mountain. He said they were going well over 1,000 miles per hour and that their movements were similar to, quote, a saucer if you skip it across water. The news incorrectly reported that he'd said the objects were saucer-shaped, and now you know where flying saucer came from. He is the inventor of the flying saucer.
I don't know. Have you ever skipped a saucer across a pond?
I should, apparently. That's a thing that people do, I guess. When the Air Force looked into what he'd seen, they felt that he was entirely credible, as in this isn't a crazy man.
Right.
But that he'd seen some sort of mirage or some sort of optical illusion. Project Grudge came about next. I would like to know why it was named that. They spent a portion of their time trying to calm down the public. That seemed to be their focus because so many reports were coming in, and it was felt that the Air Force looking into the UFOs was actually causing more public anxiety and therefore more sighting.
Okay. That makes sense.
They actually did PR campaigns where they explained away all of the sightings, listing the things they discovered must be the cause, such as balloons. Weather balloons are always the go-to, by the way. Reflections off aircraft, meteors, optical illusions, and best of all, large hailstones.
How fucking big is that hailstone?
Right? And I'm like, do they mean like it reflected light and therefore like, or like they're in the middle of a hailstorm, you're like, that there one is a UFO. I don't know.
I've never seen a hailstone that big. I mean, we get them big in Colorado, but...
They attributed much of it to war hysteria.
Fair.
Project Grudge was shut down in December 1949. In 1951, Private First Class Francis P. Wall was stationed near a town called Chorwan, north of Seoul. He and his men were attacking a village with artillery when something bizarre happened. Orange lights he described as like a jack-o'-lantern swept down the nearby mountain. It was some manner of aircraft, then flew directly into the artillery fire, but was unbothered by it, like it's exploding around it and nothing's happening. Then the aircraft turned from the village and started pulsing blue-green. He fired on it with armor-piercing bullets, but they simply pinged off, and he did hear metallic sounds. The light started moving erratically and flashing more. Then he said, quote, we were attacked, swept by some form of array that was emitted in pulses and waves that you could visually see when it was aiming directly at you. That is to say, like a searchlight sweeps around in the segments of light, you would see it coming at you. End quote. It burned and tingled when it made contact with his body, as if his flesh were being penetrated. The men gave up on their attack and fled to a bunker, and then they watched it, and it continued to hover over where the bunker was, then abruptly took off at a 45-degree angle and disappeared from their sight. Shortly after, the men grew sick, too weak to do anything, and they had to be evacuated 3 days later, the entire unit. Doctors diagnosed them with dysentery and white blood cell counts that were insanely high. Looking back, experts have said the symptoms the men reported actually sounded like radiation poisoning altogether. During the Korean War, there were a ton of other UFO reports, many seen by multiple people, even whole military units at once, like the one I mentioned. After the Soviet Union broke down and more information was able to come out of there, it was reported that even Soviet soldiers had reported similar sightings.
I'm wondering, the one you talked about in all the detail, I'm wondering, did no one think supernatural instead of UFO?
Because they felt like it was an aircraft and the lights.
I'm just thinking something rose out of the earth to protect the villagers.
Right?
That's where my mind goes. Right? It could fly. And it wouldn't be harmed by bullets.
But it was metallic. The bullets hit it and
well,
pinged.
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay. Or the radiation.
Well, I think if a being can rise up out of the ground to...
it can emit
radiation.
It was Godzilla.
Or Mothra.
And this tore apart rationale that had claimed this was no UFO, but a Soviet weapon being tested in Korea. Although I'm like, it's not like they told their people anything. So, really. In 1952, the big one, Project Blue Book. This is one that kind of exploded across the news in the not-too-distant past here came about. As Cold War tensions had escalated, and with the Korean War causing even more tension, UFO sightings poured in. During the 37 months of the Korean War, UFO reports averaged more than one per month throughout the entirety.
Wow.
Aside from the Russians, it was also thought that they could be Chinese aircraft being tested, but nothing similar. The point they made was, they always say it's craft being tested, right? It's new weapon, new plane, but it never gets rolled out. You never see it in a future war or anything like that. And they're like, so that takes away the credence there. Some other theories were that these were aliens studying how warfare was conducted by each side, and that UFO activity picked up precisely because of the battles, and that's why there's more reports during these times.
Okay.
They're like, if you wanted to invade a country or like a planet, would you not study what that planet used to fight each other? Because that's what they're going to use on you.
That would make sense.
They also said there tends to be a lot of creativity involved in warfare. There's a lot of new things being made. Everybody's trying new tactics and strategies. So it makes sense. When Wall returned home after the war, having decided with his men that they would not report the phenomenon they had witnessed, he suffered ongoing health issues. He had gone from 180 pounds to 138, and he was never able to put it back. He had stomach problems that never cleared up, memory loss, and sometimes became disoriented. His daughter did say he had PTSD. They didn't know the term for it at the time. Of course, I think it might have still been shell shock at the time. But because of these ongoing issues and his concern about how sick he was, he finally did report what he had seen, but no one else ever came forward. Interestingly, the CIA kept tabs on the Air Force in their investigations. That's actually the report I was reading, was what the CIA was doing the whole time, following the Air Force. Which is interesting to me, that the CIA is spying on the Air Force. They felt that while the Air Force's report saying none of the sightings were legitimate was likely accurate, there was still a chance there could be, quote, interplanetary aircraft, as they called it, and recommended that each sighting still be investigated. So we've got both the Air Force and the CIA saying, okay, none of this has been real, but we can't say it never would be. When Project Blue Book was started, it was because of all the UFO sightings, of course. Many of these were coming in as strange things seen on radar, but not viewed with the naked eye. So it was a lot of, and that's a lot of military reporting saying we have these blips and there's nothing there.
Right.
July 1952 was a hotbed of radar activity, such that they scrambled jets to investigate, never finding anything. It's hard to scramble jets without people noticing. We would notice around here if they were scrambling jets. We would. And with those same people already being freaked out about Cold War activities, it quickly found its way into newspapers across the country, reaching the eyes of President Truman, who demanded answers. The response from the Air Force was that the radar blips were temperature inversions. Whatever that means. The CIA decided to create their own scientific group in the Office of Scientific Intelligence and the Office of Current Intelligence to look everything over and see if they were still in agreement with the Air Force. Unlike the Air Force, they decided to keep this project close so as not to alarm the public more than they already were. By this time, much government manpower had gone into investigating UFO sightings. Eventually, the CIA group met with the Air Force group to look at everything together. The Air Force at this time felt that 90% of sightings were easily explained away and called 10%, quote, a number of incredible reports from credible observers. They felt it was likely misunderstood natural phenomena. The British were also looking into UFO reports. While they agreed with the U.S. Air Force and CIA, the British public believed in UFOs just as much as the American public.
Of course.
Making things worse was a sighting during an air show where pilots and military officials saw a flying saucer that could not be explained away. At the end of 1952, a group of scientists was put together to form the Robertson Panel. They looked at evidence collected and decided there was no credible evidence from there being creatures from another planet. On August 13th, 1956, an incident in Suffolk, England, occurred around RAF Bentwaters. That's their bases. It was being used by the U.S. Air Force at that time. At 9:30 p.m., something appeared on radar. It seemed to be an aircraft coming in for landing, but it was going a few thousand miles per hour. To the northeast, there were also several objects moving together, slower than the single object that merged into one giant object that then disappeared off radar to the north, and there was another fast target flying east to west.
Damn.
At a T-33 shooting star, I thought that was I had to put the whole jet name in there because of the things we're talking about. It was a lot. All of the planes are Lockheed planes. A T-33 shooting star jet trainer was sent out to check on the objects, but saw nothing with the naked eye. At 10:55 p.m., an object appeared on radar flying from the east at somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 miles per hour.
Damn.
This time, a bright white light was seen by both by someone on the ground on the base and by a C-47 pilot flying at 4,000 feet altitude. The lights had passed under his plane.
Oh.
Bentwaters contacted RAF Lakenheath, also being used by the U.S. Air Force, and told them to keep an eye on radar. Several people on the ground at the base saw multiple bright objects. And the base, this is Lakenheath now, this is the second base.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple bright objects flying over, then making sharp turns, merging, and flying off. 2 Venoms were deployed. One pilot said the object he was following was able to maneuver around behind him and chased him for 10 minutes. And he was taking evasive maneuvers, and it stuck right with him. The second one had technical issues and had to return to base. These objects did at the same time appear on the radar. A Royal Air Force member who was the radar controller at RAF Neatis Head, a third base, came out years later to say that they had observed the same things as the Americans and that they had actually released the Venoms, not the Americans. The Americans had only listened in when they scrambled those jets. A civilian on the ground told the press in 1978 he'd witnessed lights too. The Condon Report, which I've mentioned in a previous episode, was put together by the Condon Committee out of the University of Colorado's UFO project. Unlike many other sightings they had debunked, their final say in this case was, quote, "In conclusion, although conventional or natural explanations certainly cannot be ruled out, the probability of such seems low in this case, and the probability that at least one genuine UFO was involved appears to be fairly high." End quote. In contrast to that, it's been argued that the Perseid meteor shower was occurring at the same time, which would explain the lights, and that they were false radar returns showing stuff. Yeah, that's their explanation for it.
Okay. Well, it's better. At least it's not weather balloon this time. It's weather, but not weather balloon.
Jumping back to 1947, that was the year of the infamous Roswell incident. The aforementioned sightings had already been occurring, and when the wreckage was discovered on his farm, officials said it was a weather balloon, right? That's where that comes from. But rumors persisted, and in 1978, a retired Air Force officer said it was a cover-up, restarting that Roswell conspiracy, of course, and it's still going strong. In the years between 1947 and 1978, officials had grown weary of the UFO craze. This is a vast simplification of what I read in this report. And with improvements in radar technology, the blips had become fewer and fewer. Though the belief in UFOs never fully died off with the public. It was also insinuated that alien bodies had been discovered in the wreckage and that they are being stored by the military and or the government. The official statement now, which I did not recall having heard, is it was a balloon, but it was launched by the U.S. military in something called Project Mogul. These balloons were carrying, they would let go these arrays, they called them, multiple balloons. They were carrying microphones that would fly at a specific high altitude and detect the sound waves created by Soviet testing of atomic bombs. So that's why they were covering up. They didn't want people to know that they were releasing these balloons high up in the atmosphere.
I get that. Kind of.
And these particular ones, they let them go and they lost it. I think it said like 17 miles. They suddenly lost contact with them. And then that one crashed in that guy's farm. The other ones probably went over the ocean, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a weather balloon, but it also wasn't aliens, or so they said.
Or was it?
Or was it? Project Blue Book was officially closed in 1969, a year after the Condon Report concluded there was nothing to see here. Project Blue Book agreed and felt there was no reason to continue pouring man-hours and money into UFO studies. In all of this, the CIA got accused of covering things up.
Of course.
And yada, yada, yada.
First time ever.
Know very much about how the government was accused of covering up the Greys. The Air Force said they had investigated 12,618 UFO reports during that time.
Wow.
In Project Blue Book, and been able to prove that most of them were either natural phenomena or regular aircraft that had caused optical illusions. There were military planes that could fly at vastly higher altitudes than regular planes of other types. They also felt that some of the unidentified objects were flights of U-2 and A-12, which were reconnaissance planes created by Lockheed that weren't public knowledge and were being tested.
Okay, that also makes sense.
701 reports were found to be unexplained.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. The reports from Project Blue Book can be requested using the Freedom of Information Act now. This was the whole thing that blew wide open, and then they had to release the records and all of that, so it is available. They do still have redactions of names and personal information of the witnesses so that they cannot be harassed, which is solid. The incidents I detailed have never been disproven, though. They have not come up with anything other than the solutions that they said. Sources, history.com, Studies in Intelligence, very dry paper. Wikipedia, Project Blue Book. I read the summary report from them in their final statement, which was fun because there were like notes scribbled all over it and then like redactions of some names and stuff. And I was like, as I read the little military report.
So that's very... could be. It's like, no, there's probably nothing to it, but we can't say that for 100%.
The Korean one is really interesting to me because of the radiation sickness that happened afterwards. So I'm like, anybody want to explore that knows some more shit than me? That would be great.
Yeah.
But, because, they had scientists look at it and look through everything that they were saying, and they were like, yeah, this is radiation sickness. And the villagers were certainly not using something that was,
No.
So who was?
Of course, the pat answer is the Russians.
I got all excited because they were like, ooh, this incident in England was the British equivalent of Roswell. So here I'm thinking they're going to think that there were like, I cut it out after I wrote it down because I'm like, well, that's boring. It was nothing like Roswell, except it was all military. What I did was I got to all this from a report that was specifically UFO sightings taken seriously by the U.S. military.
Okay.
Well, and there were a lot more. So a lot of these things were cited there. But yeah, the one, I don't even remember what it was called now. It was some forest in England. And I was like, okay, I mean, like, you'd open a movie with this scene, but it didn't give me anything better than that.
Yeah.
There were no graves.
It's like when we hear about, because when we're doing research, we've commented on this before, we're always looking for a good haunting.
Yeah.
Where there's more than one person who is
They haven't been able to disprove it necessarily.
And you find so many that it's like one person said one time they maybe saw something and they were drunk at the time. And it's, no, that's not a haunting.
Yeah, and I will say the officer on that one, the British Roswell, got publicly shamed for it because he wrote up an official report detailing it. And they were like, well, this light was the Port Orford, whatever, lighthouse, and this was this. And it said that it upset some farm animals, and they were like, okay, something upset the farm animals, whatever. Maybe it was you guys,
It doesn't take a lot. I mean...
Yeah, and every other person stated, like, normal things, and he wrote this whole report.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for him. So now we're going back to Muncie. Welcome back to Marauding Muncie. So I have, and this is, the first one was Murderous Muncie. This is just fucking weird Muncie. So I found this little fun fact. I found this great site, and it had these local historians and people from Ball State University who at Halloween, they tell stories, the legends that have grown up around Muncie. And some of them, they would just say, well, in a previous, in years past, we've talked about the connection between Heaven's Gate and Muncie. And I was like, what the fuck is that? I gotta find out more about that. And then it was so hard because it would be, well, we talked about the blah, blah murder, and I would go herring off searching for him, and the name wasn't spelled, because I was going from the transcript. Yeah. So I would at least have a hint of how things were spelled. But here's a little fun fact. In June of 1976, 4 members of the Heaven's Gate cult appeared at Ball State University on a recruiting mission. It was not either of the 2 bigwigs who were leading it up, the man or the woman, but nobody in Muncie took them up on their offer.
I think one of them, the man was like something Applegate or something. I just remember there's Apple or something.
It was, and the woman was like or some weird, or Do, or some weird name. I purposely did not let myself go down that rabbit hole. But, so, apparently the people of Muncie were like, no thanks, not interested. That was the whole... I was like, that's it. They did go to another location in Indiana, and I can't remember. Someplace I'd heard of, but I can't remember. So, however, Then there's the story of Pearlie Gillsby Hogg. So life started shitting on him shortly after he was born. His father abandoned the family in 1907, just a few weeks before he was born. His mother moved Pearlie and his sister to Muncie to be closer to family, and then she died when Pearlie was 4. His aunt and uncle, Mr. and Mrs. Charles Cooper, took Pearlie in. There is no record of what the sister's name was or what happened to her. Pearlie was a very quiet and reserved child who was treated more like a servant by his aunt and uncle than as part of the family, and he was always working. That was what everybody said about him.
He was the little boy Cinderella.
He was a little boy Cinderella. When he got to Muncie High School in 1920, he was already working almost full-time hours after school. He would leave school and go to work until the sun went down. He planned to leave school at the age of 16 when he could be legally emancipated from his aunt and uncle. On December 21st, 1922, Pearlie tore out of the house that morning because he was running late for school and he didn't want to be late. He attended school that day and was never seen again. Period. End of story.
Period.
Except, skip ahead to July of 1931. So we're talking 9 years later. Muncie Central High School was engaged in some long overdue maintenance of all the pipe work that resided inside the 75-foot air shafts. The plumbers on the job knew that nobody had even peeked inside the air shaft for at least 4 years. And there was masonry that fell and it was a mess. And these shafts were just to move air in the building. Because we're going to come back to the air shafts, not in this story, but in another one. When they entered the shaft, they had to navigate over and around fallen brick, heaps of crumbled masonry that had tumbled down over the years. And then they stepped on something that didn't feel right.
Oh.
Yeah, it just didn't feel right. It gave way too easily. And so they shone a light on the floor and discovered a human skeleton. The head had separated from the rest of the skeleton and was found with pieces of heavy work shoes, a pocket knife, and scraps of a folder. Now, the uncle, Charles Cooper, identified the shoes and knife as belonging to Pearlie. There was no obvious cause of death. I mean, this had been 9 years, and it had just been laying out. Teachers suspected Pearlie might have been sneaking a smoke and fallen down the shaft.
Oh, okay.
Police thought he might have crawled into the shaft for whatever reason and accidentally fallen. For years, his aunt and uncle claimed he was murdered, although there is absolutely nothing to support that fact. There was one investigator, this was the thing, his aunt and uncle claimed they spent every waking minute and every dollar they could spare looking for him.
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, they went looking for him and placed ads in the paper, but one investigator spent weeks going through all the archived newspapers at the time. And they have, I don't know why, maybe it was because of Ball State, they have a really good archive of old newspapers. And this person went through all the ads. There were none. Absolutely zero ads looking for this kid. The sad thing is that people claimed Pearlie was despondent, that he was depressed, that he said, the next time you see me, I'll be in a hole in the ground. His aunt and uncle did not want anyone to consider that he might have committed suicide because that was a social bad thing.
Yeah.
Not like it's a great thing, but it would have reflected badly on them if he had committed suicide. They also were very angry at the teachers saying he might have been sneaking a smoke because smoking was considered low class and not something they wanted him to be doing.
Bitches.
But they never found a cause of death, and they have no idea. Did he do this to himself? Did he fall? Was he pushed? No idea. Then there's Nelson Wimpy Dull. How about going through the life with the last name of Dull and the nickname of Wimpy?
Wow.
So he was
That's a lot.
That is a lot. He was a 34-year-old painter who, one evening in April of 1948, told his wife he couldn't sleep and he was going to go out for some fresh air. And this was around 1:30 in the morning. I was like, fucker, do not wake me up at 1:30 in the morning to tell me you're going out for fresh air. But he was never seen alive again. His wife reported him missing almost immediately, and a search began with no luck. So it's important to note that a few months prior to this, he had been struck He'd been involved in a car accident. He was struck by a car while he was out walking, and one of his legs was severely injured, so he could not walk very far. So it wasn't like he could just get, like, he wasn't going Forrest Gump and running across the country. Jump ahead to almost 2 weeks later. It was a warm day, and the custodian at Muncie Central High School turned on the school's ventilation system for the first time that year. When teachers and students began arriving, they were greeted by a foul stench on the upper floors of the school. When it just kept getting worse, custodian Aramis Joris went up to the roof to see what he could figure out. So apparently on the roof, there's a hatch into a crawl space. The crawl space was only 3.5 or 4 feet tall. It was a buffer. So it served to keep the heat out in the summer and to keep the cool air out in the winter, but it was just an big empty space. So he opens the hatch and crawls in and discovers decomposing human remains. The remains were quickly identified as Nelson Dull, but nobody could figure out what the fuck he was doing there. His naked body was laying face up about 18 feet from the hatch. His clothes were found nearby in a pile, although his wallet, wedding ring, and silver ID bracelet were missing. There were no obvious signs of trauma on the body, and toxicology, such as it was at that time, didn't turn up anything either. Other items found in the attic buffer space were a ripped up straw hat, a newspaper from 1918, jars of food, and a chair knocked over beneath the hatch. They suspect that whoever had been using that space, that chair was how they got in and out. And but there's no...
But, like, was he rendezvousing? Was it the clothes being off? Or did he get held at gunpoint, told to take his clothes off so he couldn't fall? Like, there's a lot of things that could have happened.
There's so many things, and nobody has absolutely any idea. And, I mean, his wife was like, no, he didn't have any enemies. He was liked.
And to this day, his naked ghost haunts the halls. I feel like custodians must find, like, an unfair percentage of bodies, much like hikers. Like there's a couple, or dog walkers.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
There's just some people who are just going to be in positions where they're like, oh, damn it.
They have to scrape up used chewing gum and find dead bodies.
And stumble upon some of them, literally.
It is not right. So I got very excited because there was the Roberts Hotel in Muncie, and this was the big... I couldn't tell because I saw it as the Roberts Hotel and also as the Hotel Roberts. But this was like the big fancy hotel in town. It was built by an immigrant man and his family in 1921, and it was reportedly haunted. A ghost was said to stand by a window that she fell out of in 1945. But I could not find a name to put with the woman. And a figure standing by a window hardly seems like a haunting worth researching. I'm like, so somebody blinked and had a blur and called it a figure standing there. I just was like, no, there's no newspaper article documenting her fall, nothing. But they had a really cool other unsubstantiated high-profile haunting. This is at Elliott Hall at Ball State University, and this one has all the details. A student named William Schamberg, who was a wounded World War II vet, climbed the marble steps to the Elliott Hall Library and hanged himself on January 26, 1947. So, and this legend is still going, despite the fact that there are no records of any student by that name ever attending the university. There's no record of a student death by suicide in that building.
Hey, when we were working for a certain company collecting medical
yes,
and school records and stuff for attorneys, there was, of course, that we were looking into some for kids who had been molested at their church. And it was interesting because their siblings' records existed, but their records didn't exist at the school. So,
okay, fair. But
sometimes they bury things.
Yes.
Sometimes they don't, though. I don't know. I don't know if colleges would do that or whatever.
I don't know. But here we go. Muncie had a cult. Had a homegrown cult. We do love a good cult story. You're just going to fucking flip when you hear this one. This is not like anything else we have ever talked about. So this is from, and when I get to the places, Sources. I'll name the museum, but this is directly from the museum's website. In 1913, 3 men from Muncie all suffered from digestive issues. They were former congressman and lawyer George Cromer, John Fitzgibbons, president of Muncie Ornamental Iron Company, and Harry W. Long, who was a lawyer and prosecuting attorney. Okay? These were the educated men of their time.
Mm-hmm.
One day, while in the throes of the pain of gastritis, Fitzgibbons was gazing at his chickens as they rolled in the dirt and dust and occasionally stopped to nibble sand. His thought, according to an article in the Muncie Evening Press of September 1st, 1913, was, did anybody ever hear of a chicken having a tummy ache? He inquired among his poultry-fancying friends, and not one had ever heard of a fowl with a painful stomach ache.
Okay. All right.
This killed me. So these are educated professional men, and Fitzgibbons reasoned that if chickens ate sand and didn't have stomach problems, while humans didn't eat sand and did have stomach problems, why, the answer was abundantly clear. People needed to eat sand.
Yeah. Okay,
he felt so darn good afterward, he recommended it to his 2 friends, one of whom reportedly leapt out of bed with the energy of a 10-year-old and threw 2 rowdy tramps off his property after ingesting sand.
Hobo tramps?
Hobo tramps.
Okay, I was like, you just threw some sex worker, and you called them.
No, sorry. Back then, hobo tramps.
Hobo tramps.
In all fairness, Fitzgibbons did recommend that the sand, preferably from a lakeshore, be boiled or baked before being eaten.
That'll make it better.
Sand.
Use sand to
they ate
clean water when you're doing filtering. So
it was a big story in 1913 to 1914. And there was actually some socialite who, not only did she eat sand, she traveled with her own specially prepared sand so that she would always have it available to eat.
It's okay, I've got this.
It was never mentioned again. It was like this big deal about how these guys had come up with this revolutionary, we need to eat sand.
They all died weighing 5 pounds extra with sand in their stomachs.
Interestingly, though, especially given this was in the early 1900s, the most public eaters of sand lived into their 70s and 80s. So they lived a good long life. But can you imagine the grit? The grit in your mouth of eating sand.
It probably just kept them full so they didn't overeat, and so then they lived a real long time.
What would it be like?
I don't know. I don't want to find out.
Pooping it out the other end. That
Gritty.
does not sound like fun.
Scratch the whole way out.
Right?
Deeply unpleasant.
Yeah.
Be very heavy. Just
think of what it would do
clog
to
up your
plumbing.
toilet.
Yes. So I was just like, so people, apparently for a while in Muncie, people ate sand.
And all this because they assumed that a chicken didn't have a stomach ache. Because how the fuck do they know if a chicken ever had a stomach ache?
That was
What did
my
it do?
question.
Tell them?
How do you talk to the chickens and
Peck at its stomach? What did they think would tell them that the chickens had a stomach? I'm pretty sure anything with a stomach can probably get a stomach ache.
That was my question, was how did you communicate this? How did you get a health history from a chicken?
And when they're pecking at sand, they're getting bugs and shit. They're not eating the sand.
Yeah. I was just like, I can't wait to talk about this on the podcast. The sand eaters.
Men.
Okay, so
rich white men.
Really, I wish we have a few who could. I wish they were eating sand. Anyway, so then there's the case of Lavina Black, who in November of 1898 lived on a farm with her husband, close to the Bailey farm and the Childs farm. These were her neighbors. So she contended that one of her neighbors, John L. Bailey, had attacked and raped her. Her attempts to have him arrested and prosecuted met with failure. When she ran into Mr. Bailey unexpectedly at the Childs farm, she shot him. 3 or 4 times, which was not really necessary because the first bullet entered his brain and killed him instantly. So I'm like, you go, Lavina. She was a good shot. I know, that's probably irresponsible of me. But it turns out at his trial, a friend had lied to give him an alibi. But when Lavina came to trial for shooting him, the man recanted and admitted he had just lied for his friend. So she was...
That's good.
She was not sentenced. She was not found guilty. Or they let her go. It turned out as okay as it can after such a thing. But I'm like, what the fuck is going on in Muncie? So, all told, I don't think I'm going to put Muncie on my bucket list of places to visit.
No? You want to drive through there?
There does not seem to be any
look at
reason
Muncie
to.
High School.
Muncie Central High.
Yeah.
I want to see the shaft where...
See the shaft.
What is? I don't even know if the school is still standing. Then there's I didn't even talk about the hotel where, again, it started, I believe, as a Holiday Inn, and it was a fancy, and it had an attached restaurant and a bar, and by a certain point, it was infested with bed bugs, and people were being arrested for prostitution and drug deals, and yeah.
Amazing how, like, when you look at places that are like ghetto or whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
And then if you were to look at their origins, there's no indication it would ever become like that.
Yeah, if
the
you
way
go
things
back.
change and it's like how towns move around.
Yep.
Yeah.
How things move.
Or how there's ghettos right in the middle of like upper. Like I lived in a ghetto right next to freaking Peregrine, you know? And here we had drug deals happening all the time and all this stuff. And the newspaper people went and slashed everybody's tires because I don't know why, because they were dicks. I complained about them. But, so, you know, it was an interesting neighborhood. And there's Peregrine and Rock Rimmon and Mountain Shadows on the 3 different sides of it. And then a giant fucking mountain on the other side. So there's no neighborhood there.
A few years ago, we had a neighbor, our next door neighbor, whose teenage son, for some reason, all of a sudden, there were cars pulling up and he would go out to the car for a couple of minutes and then go back in the house. And this would happen, 2 or 3 times. Not always the same car. And so when I was out documenting the state because the person who owned the house had moved out and he was subletting it and using it for business. Don't even want to go there. But I was documenting because they were like putting out open trash, like not putting it in a bag and putting it in a barrel. Just there was trash all over. There was pizza. Because one day I opened my door and there was a swarm of flies. And I'm like, what the actual fuck? So I was documenting it. And the woman who lived there came out and was like, why are you taking pictures of where I live? And I said, because it's going to shit and nobody's taking care of it. And I want to call the owner and find out what's going on. And somehow the subject of her teenage son came up and she goes, well, he just has a lot of friends. And I said that he talks to for 2 minutes at a time, 2 and 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't think he's doing what you think he's doing.
Moms are so delusional about sons sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
So my sources, the Star Press, the Minnetrista Museum, that was an excellent site. The Indianapolis News, the Hoosier State Chronicles, Ball State Immersive Learning, Indiana Historical Bureau, and Muncie Evening Press. I do want to say something I found that I really wanted to follow up on, but I couldn't get the juicy bits. Ball State University has a criminology program, or at least at some point in the recent past did, and they allow students in this one class to look at cold cases and the students were talking about how we go into it with a totally different perspective because we are civilians than a police officer looks at it. So they said these are still active cases, but they're cold cases. It's not a murder that happened yesterday. These are things that happened a while ago. And they said, and we are sometimes able to turn up something. We turn everything over to the police and they investigate it. And I just thought that sounded really cool, but I couldn't go pull out any actual crimes that they had helped solve.
Gotcha.
Or that was kind of...
But I mean, it is that we've seen that from online sleuths or citizen sleuths or whatever you want to call them, that sometimes they can't, they have more time dedicated to it because they don't have this caseload, right?
Right.
And But also, some people will talk to a civilian that won't talk to a cop. There's a lot of groups of people that don't want to talk, don't feel safe talking to a cop. And just so on and so forth. There's different things they might think of to look at. Whereas if you're looking at from this official stance, you're not looking at those things. So I think there are a lot of ways that there was a way to include that and not just ultimately train them into just being cops, which would ruin the whole thing.
Right. And I don't know that that's where everybody was going, but I thought it was fascinating that, you had professors and you had police professionals and training them and explaining why they do it the way that they do it.
Well, and also, I think they see the same thing so much over and over and over again that they have these preconceived notions, right? And you see that with medicine, too. I think a lot could be done in medicine if you had people that didn't come to it with preconceived notions and go, well, I've seen this a billion times, and then they miss that you had fucking cancer or a massive heart attack or whatever, because they think, oh, it's just another hysterical woman or whatever. And then
it is usually women.
It wasn't. So there's a lot of things where I think that people who aren't deep in it, who haven't seen the same thing and become kind of inured to it, can do some good.
Because it does... As much as I don't think it's right, it saves time when you see these 5 symptoms and the last 10 times you've seen it, it's been X. Yeah, you're going to think it's X.
That's why, like, sometimes it's better to go, if I'm seeing a surgeon, I probably want a surgeon with a lot of experience. If I'm seeing a regular doctor who I want to be open-minded and figure out what's going on, I like going to a younger doctor.
Yep.
Who's been studying stuff more, who's been keeping up on stuff, who's been more recent technology and more recent just information. Like, that's where I like nurse practitioners, for example, for if I need somebody to be open-minded. But then when it's time to cut me open, then I'm going to be like, cool, refer me.
Yes. Refer me to somebody with
I am not your learning experience. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. That's how I'm going to look at life.
I agree with that.
I would like except for with officers, I don't know, some of those boots, as they're called, that they come in maybe adhering a little more strictly to the rules than other ones, and that can sometimes be detrimental too. So I don't know on that one. I'd have to think about that. I would like a middle.
I would like someone who's been here for 2 to 4
number of years, so they're over pulling people over for no good reason because they were going a little fast, and they're like, that is against the law. And maybe not one of the ones that's become dirty because they've been in it far enough that they've become political and decided they need the money. And they hate everybody.
Well, and they've seen, to be fair, not that it's right, but they have seen the worst. They've seen the worst things that people can do to each other.
That is the problem. And so it's stuff like that needs to have that high, all right, now we switch you to something different.
Yes.
Instead of leaving you in this, that now you're taking all your preconceived notions from the terrible things that you've seen. That would also be true for soldiers and shit, right?
Yes.
Like, how many times have they been depicted in movies and in books and shit as like this person who doesn't give a shit anymore because they've been in this for too long.
For so long.
It's just true for a lot of things. It's human nature. But for some reason, we can't seem to reconcile human nature with like reality and understand that there's things you need to do to meet it face to face and do things that fix it because we're stupid. That's how we're going to end that podcast. People are stupid.
Can we just call it this episode?
People are stupid. Except I don't know that it actually plays it, except for crawling in vents, apparently. Getting naked and falling down vents. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's like, why would he? There's no reason for him to be naked.
That's the way I'm like,
and his clothes are like piled up, and it's not like
did your wife not know that you were secretly into dudes, and you went and you had this meet up with this dude?
No,
but why are you meeting in a high school?
Cool. In the attic.
Was it a custodian? He was meeting up with a custodian. The custodian killed him, but it was a different custodian than the one that found him, or maybe it wasn't.
Or maybe it wasn't.
We don't know. Maybe he was like, "Oh gosh, what a surprise! There's a dead man here."
You sound like Mr.
Mickey
Bill.
Mouse. Oh, that was Mr. Bill. Well, that's what the custodian sounded like when he found him. Of course. Just, oh no, Mr. Bill, no. I remember what the fuck was that from? Was that old SNL?
Yes.
Okay. Little clay guy just
Mr. Bill
getting brutalized over and over.
Sluggo would always smush him.
Wow. That's an old revisit.
Yep. That was actually before I watched it regularly.
Well, because all that was on somewhere. They had the old ones on Nick at Night or something. I don't even remember what I watched a lot of Nick at Night. So kind of just assume if I watched anything old, it might have been there.
Did you see when, what is her name? Oh, the actress. I love her. She used to be on SNL and she did the opening for Mother's Day weekend.
Oh, I didn't. I don't watch it.
Oh, it was brilliant. She was the bride in Bridesmaids.
Oh, yeah. I know who it is.
Yeah, I can't think of her name and I feel so bad because
she's funny.
She's hilarious. She did this opening that if you get a chance, go watch it. It's absolutely hysterically funny. And I do not think that SNL is absolutely hysterically funny all that often.
Yeah. I was reminded of, speaking of like things from like USA Up All Night. Up All Night. You remember that?
God, yes.
Somebody posted like an image and then I heard it. USA Up All Night. Because I used to watch that obsessively too. Because it was just like older films or something. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
But yeah, I remember watching that. When you have insomnia, you watch a lot of things. That's true.
Lately people are talking about the fact that for Gen X, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
All these, there's so many mottos that I still remember from them. And I'm like, did this work? And no, you don't know where I am. No.
But it was like, who watched that commercial and went, oh shit, no, where is Junior? I don't know where.
Right. Oh shit, I should go check outside. No, because we were supposed to be home when the lights turned on.
When the street lights come on,
and therefore, dark. And then I'd say, "Can I go back out?" And then they'd like let us go out just to like our little
in the yard.
Yes. And so they're like, "Sure, but you have to be where I can see you." So some of them didn't know where we were, but no, that Gen X women group that we're in. Mm-hmm. Gen X women don't give a shit, or something like that.
Who are sick of your shit.
Who are sick of your shit. So it's been largely invaded by men because they are allowed in the group. And on the one hand, I'm like, okay, so who cares at first? But then some became problematic, right? And it's like, why do you think we wanted to hear that thing that you just posted to us that was completely inappropriate? And we have literally discussed it 5 billion times in here, you dickwad. So they made a spinoff group I found.
Oh.
And it says no men allowed. It's the same name, but then no men allowed. And so I joined this group and I left it less than 24 hours later because it was just a lot of women complaining about men. That was the entirety of it. And I was like, this is dull.
Because I posted to the group and said, I'm asking this very respectfully. It's called Gen X Women Who Are Sick of Your Shit. Why are there men allowed in the group? Yeah. And they would not post it. But they did respond to me and told me it's an open group on Facebook. Anybody could join it. So if men are being dickheads, I report them. If they're not being dickheads, I just block them so I don't ever see them. Because I'm like, it's called Gen X Women. We
like had a fucking place to hang out.
Totally sick of your shit.
Yeah.
Totally and completely sick of your shit.
Yeah, the other one was just like, I should have known, I guess. I'm like, I'm not interested in man hating. I just wanted a space, like I didn't want a space to talk about men. That was not, that's really not what we talk about in the original group at all. But this other one, my God, it was just a bunch of miserable, awful women. Like all the posts were, this happened to me and this happened to me and this happened to me and men did this to me and just rage. And then there were people responding and then just like man bashing posts. And I'm like, I know a lot of great men. I know a lot of wonderful men. Yeah. I have friends. I have my husband. I have my son. I have siblings, my dad,
there are wonderful men out there.
Come on. So yeah, but it seems like it had turned that way because there were a lot of women asking posts like, why the fuck is this what's in here? What is wrong? You guys are miserable and unhappy. I'm sorry. Is this what the group is now?
Yeah.
And so they were, and I was like, okay, bye.
So we were talking earlier, women of a certain age who find themselves single at this age and they're just like, fuck it. Yeah. They do not
There's a lot of them in the original group that are, and they're not man bashing. They're like, oh fuck, I was married twice and this is heaven. Like, okay.
Or I like reading them because some of them are very creative and they're like, yes, I've been married for 40 years. And for the last 25 years, we've lived in a duplex and I live on one side and he lives on the other side and it's fucking great. Or they're like,
we can go out on dates.
Yeah. Or people who split up. I see this so many times. Yes, my husband was terrible. And after 13 years, I divorced him. But we had a child together. So 5 years later, we got back together and got remarried. And we're about to celebrate our blah, blah, blah anniversary. And I'm like, I'm like, I have a hard time conceiving within my own brain of wanting to divorce someone and then turning around and marrying them again later.
Mm-hmm. And yet it happens.
It does. I dated a guy whose parents had been married to and divorced from each other twice.
Oh.
They had several marriages between the two of them.
At this point, I'd be like, I don't even fucking care if you guys are married. Just leave me out of it.
Yeah. I was like, wait, they were married to each other twice? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm beginning to understand why you are so fucked up. I am not fucked up. Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you are.
Dude, just look at what the little tiny story you just told me. And tell me again that you're not fucked up.
There was a post in there recently, and I was like, so the woman posted, and she said, and I don't remember what the club was, but she was like, oh, I went here, and this young man had this shirt for this famous club. It wasn't like Studio 54. It was a different one.
Oh.
It was one I remembered. You had liked the post, I think, so I know you saw it. But... And then she was like, so I gave him a look about it and like scoffed. And then he was like, it's a club. And she was like, I know, I've been there. And I was all, you know what, bitch? You would probably be the person who would get so mad when a dude looked at your shirt and said, oh, really, name 3 songs. Because it's always a dude asking a chick. Because I got that when I moved here. I was wearing a Public Enemy shirt. I was 12. But where I came from, that's what I listened to was rap all the time. That's what I listened to. And the Dirty Dancing soundtrack, because that was the time period. And Tiffany and Debbie Gibson. That's it. And then the rest of it was rap. And of course,
rap
I got the
Tiffany.
I got the. That's right. And Debbie Gibson. And I got the name 3 songs, and I was always like, I don't owe you naming jack shit. Okay, what albums do you have? So it's totally a dude, like, they do it, the gamer chicks deal with it, with games a lot, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, well, so anyway, I was like, this bitch sounds like those guys.
Yes.
And sorry, if we're going to be hypocrites, then we don't get to bitch about the things dudes do to us if we turn around and do the same shit. She was acting holier than thou because she'd been to the club, whatever. I don't scoff at kids who are wearing Nirvana shirts now. I'm like, yeah, Nirvana lives on. Like, my daughter loves Nirvana. My kids, each of them have different bands I like that they like.
Yes. I stopped commenting on people's shirts for a while because I would comment on twice. I can remember 2 different guys commenting on what their shirt said, or one of them was a college shirt, and I made some comment about the big game the next day, and they both looked at me. These were 2 separate incidents, although both were in Virginia Beach, and it was like, oh, I don't read them. I just put them on.
Huh.
They had no idea. One was the University of North Carolina. I'm like, oh, are you going to be watching the game tomorrow against who the fuck ever, Clemson? I don't know. And I can't remember what the other one said. And he did. He looked down at it. And I don't read them. I just put them on.
Huh. Maybe that's why they asked about, they're like, I'm just assuming that chick somehow ended up with these shirts and then put them on without knowing what they're, whereas we overthink probably what shirt we're wearing that day. I know, I'm like, am I willing to have people talk to me about my shirt today? No, I am not. It's going to be a plain t-shirt.
So, when we started, I mentioned seeing my friend Leslie, who I met in graduate school. We were walking around Manitou, and there was something that said, I can't remember what it was. It was a bag or something. It had the girl with the umbrella, and it said salty bitch. Oh. And she looked at that, and she goes, oh my God, that's for you. And I said, I already have that t-shirt.
Oh, that's mine already.
I already own it, and I wear it proudly. And when you wear a salty t-shirt, like anything that has the word bitch on it, women will read it and laugh and be like, high five you, or be like, love the shirt. Men will read it and blanch. They'll think it's, they'll like start to laugh, and then they'll be like, if I comment, they're like, if I comment, I'm going to be shredded. So they just like try not to make eye contact and move past quickly. They're like, but you know, I would admire a man who could say, that's a bitchin' shirt, or just some, you know, I'm like, it's okay to read. If I have a shirt with words on it, it's okay to read it.
Yeah. I read it. I wore it for a reason. Unlike you, who found that shirt in somebody else's closet, apparently, because you don't even fucking know what it says.
One of the guys I questioned, maybe he couldn't read.
He's like, I don't know. I like the color of the letters.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, good to know. I feel my husband is very purposeful about his shirts as well, because he gets the themed Hawaiian shirts now with stuff, and I feel like superheroes today, or I feel like Star Wars.
And
I don't know.
I do love a good Hawaiian shirt.
I enjoy them too. So I was freaked out when the I don't know, QAnon or some group, one of the groups off of them started trying to make the Hawaiian shirt like their shirt. And I was like, you do not get to take this away. Because we got to see like a friend that we hadn't seen in a while at my book launch, Mitchell.
Oh, yeah.
And he showed us like vacation pictures where he and his friend were both wearing Hawaiian shirts. And I'm like, you don't get to take away the joy of Hawaiian shirts from like regular, not terrible people. You know, like that one worried me. But then it didn't go anywhere.
Good. Because I have a couple of Hawaiian shirts that belong to my brother, who is
my dad wore them as well.
Yeah.
So
I reached out to my sister-in-law and said, I have a weird question. She's like, go for it. Because my family knows me. I mean, they've met me. So they're... And I said, could I possibly have a couple of Chuck's Hawaiian shirts? She's like, really? I said, yeah, I love Hawaiian shirts. And I know that he loved them. So I would love to have a couple of his to wear. And she's like, sure. So she sent me a couple. So,
right? Like my dad was in it. He just reached a point. He was like, fuck everything. And he started wearing Hawaiian shirts and like fedora. He always had collected like various caps, fedoras or whatever. And it was great. He had his cane. And it was a whole look.
Yep.
It's like, you don't get to steal that away from me.
No.
So, yay, Hawaiian shirts. Wear Hawaiian shirts. They have theme ones. Go to Roosevelt's. That's where my husband gets his. And they have all kinds of awesome ones. They have horror ones too. That I'm like, you should get this, and then you can, because if you're going to come sit with me at book things now to keep annoying people away from me, because that's his new job, then you should get some horror things.
Okay, but remember, if he's busy, Amy and I are available.
That's right.
Amy's going, wait, I'm what?
Hold on, what are my initial here? And then she'll be like, yes, I am.
Yes, because I did tell her, and she was like, oh my God, we're there. If she's in driving distance, we will be there. And she even said we could be nice about it. Like, not just like...
Okay.
Not just like... I'm all hip check the motherfucker out of the way. And she's just like, no, we'll just go up. Oh, excuse me. Can I get you... We've got other people who need to get up. She's all nice. And I'm like, fuck that. I do not have... Some days my reservoir of nice is very low.
Oh, mine is getting back there. Yeah. I'm like, I liked better when I just said what I meant. And was blunt and didn't try and soften things to spare people's feelings. And honestly, my life was far better when I was that way. And then society kept telling me that I had to be different. And so I worked really hard about it. Honestly, it was because I became a parent, and then I felt like I needed to change things because it wouldn't just reflect on me. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, fuck everybody. But it's actually not that easy to go back to a place you were before once you've had to sequester.
We have a mutual friend who told me that he thought I was more open than I used to be. And he goes, and I'm saying this about you. And I just laughed.
Okay. All right.
I got done with the bullshit. I was like, if people ask me, I'm just going to say what I think.
Clearly it's happening. I'm just in that retransition place, I guess.
Yep.
Where I'm like, I've cut some people off at the knees recently and been nice to other people. It really depends on the day. which me I'm embracing that day. So good luck to you all, is what I'm saying. And if you're not a dick, then I don't have to be a dick to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not just doing it to people, strangers, pleasantly walking down the street and not doing anything. No. It's just that I was allowing people to get away with more shit than I used to. And I look at my daughter and she's how I was, where it was like, I don't care. I'm not here to spare your feelings because you're being an awful person right now. And so fuck you. So I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to tell you it's not okay. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is just like a normal middle-age transition period. Maybe it's a little harder when you're autistic. I don't fucking know.
But it just fucking never gets easier.
All right, folks.
Look at me being subtle.
Embrace Hawaiian shirts. Don't be a dick. What else? What other lessons did we have today?
It's basically don't
judge people about their shirts.
Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't go back to the New York Times.
That's right. UFOs might be real. We don't know.
Yeah. And Muncie.
And Muncie.
Don't
You
go
don't need
there.
to go there.
We have done the research.
And if you
for
go there, just stay really far away from vents. I think vents are a bad plan.
Vents are
in
bad.
Muncie,
The high school is bad.
percentage wise.
But if you have been to Muncie and have an opinion about it one way or another, please let us know.
If you've got another crime story.
Because everybody I've said, I all of a sudden Muncie is on my radar.
And yet I know the name Muncie, Indiana, like
Yeah.
as a thing. There are plenty of Indiana towns I could not name for you.
Yes.
So why?
I don't
I'm trying
know.
to remember why.
I can't remember why either. And some
Maybe
people,
it was a TV show?
maybe, but some people look at me and they go Muncie, but they've never heard of it, and I'm like,
I will
It's
say
just
when you
me.
said you were doing Muncie, I was thinking of that street artist that has one word, M.
Banksy.
It's not
Oh.
even an M. Banksy, yes. So I thought you were doing Banksy at first, and then you were like paranormal stuff, and I was like, wow. I don't know nearly enough about Banksy, do I?
I don't know anything about Banksy, but I
There you
don't think
go.
he fits the theme of our podcast normally.
Maybe we don't know.
We don't know.
There could be a lot we don't. Could be paranormal shit. See, I thought maybe there was, and I was like, okay, you split it.
That would be hilarious.
I didn't think of the town Muncie then.
Oh, well.
That's
but
funny.
I feel I'm probably mispronouncing it. But like Boise, I don't say Boise right. I was there once
Boise.
met up with a friend who lived there now. And
They're like, it's Bois.
they're like, no, I was saying Boise and they were saying it's Boise. It's an S, not a Z.
Boise.
Boise. Or the other way. I don't know. Anyway, sometimes people don't go, no, you're not pronouncing it correctly. And they say the word and I say the word and I can't hear a damn difference between what they're saying and what I'm saying. And I just nod and go, well, I'm stupid. I'll never get it.
I'm going to teach you guys that to say piece of pizza in Italian is pezzo di pizza. Now you know. I love it. It has such flaw. I was like, Jeffrey, I'm going to ask for a piece of everything when we're there. And he's like, okay. I'm like, I need a pezzo di spaghetti.
And you're going to be able to say my husband screams in his sleep.
I know. There's such a dark chapter.
That's what
I was
Duolingo
like-
is teaching you.
It kept saying, I hear strange screams and would like another room. I was like,
Nice.
oh.
I have to ask, because I've been doing Duolingo, but for Spanish, do you ever have a day when you open up the app and you just can't get fucking anything right?
Yeah.
Even though it's a word, or they say repeat back what you hear, and you play it like 3 times, and you're like,
Yeah, there's sometimes there's a word and I'm like, what word is that? But especially both Spanish and Italian have the word HO and variants of it, depending on IU. And it's pronounced O for both of them. O, blah, blah, blah. And there's an H. So when they say it, I think it's an O because an O is or, you know, and I'm like, huh. I don't like it. Why do you guys do this?
Sometimes it's like, I feel like Duolingo, the little owl is going to fly out and be like, slap me.
Just
Like,
bitch slap
come on,
you.
you do this yesterday.
And I'm like, pezzo di pizza. I don't know owl in Italian yet. It's, what is it? Buo in
I haven't
Spanish.
gotten to that yet.
Spanish. You will. There's whole sections. They start
yes.
talking about the Duolingo.
Right now
owl.
we're talking about where people are from.
Oh, okay.
A lot of them are from China, apparently.
Soy de China.
Yes.
Whereas CH is pronounced like a K in Italian. So there's little... Anyway, bye.
We'll talk to you next
Thank you for
month.
listening.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back with more shenanigans.